Hey guys, tonight we begin with one of ancient history's most breathless moments. A run so legendary that it still echoes across every finish line today. A single messenger, a single victory, and a single heartbeat that carried the hope of an entire city. So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always amazing to see this little history circle stretch around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's story together. In 490 BCE, on a dusty plain by the sea, the fate of Greece, and perhaps all of Western civilization, hung in the balance. The sea is restless, not with violence, but with rhythm. An ancient pulse that never truly stops. You can almost hear it breathing. The moon lays a path of silver over the water, and the faint outlines of islands rise like sleeping giants from the dark. Somewhere out there, a single oar dips into the surf, breaking the surface with a slow, steady splash. You can imagine the boat, a small one, nothing grand, moving along the coast near Attica. Its wooden frame creaks, and in the stillness, even the sound of rope tightening feels alive. The air tastes faintly of salt and resin. You can smell it, that mix of sea and pine that always clings to Greek shores. Farther inland, the land rises in gentle folds toward the hills, where olive groves and small farms are scattered across the valleys. The fields sleep under starlight now, but in the morning they'll shimmer with movement, shepherds calling to their flocks, women carrying baskets of figs and grapes, and children chasing each other through the dust. For now, though, it is quiet. Almost too quiet. If you listen closely, you can hear the wind shifting, brushing through the reeds along the marshes near Marathon. The reeds sway together, whispering secrets the world has long forgotten. Maybe they're warning of something. Maybe they're simply singing the song they've always known. Of time, of patience, of what comes before and after men make their choices. You're standing there now, at the edge of that field. You don't know it yet, but this plain will one day carry the weight of legends. Marathon. A word that will echo through centuries, repeated by poets, historians and runners gasping for breath on distant roads. But right now it's just a quiet valley by the sea. You can smell the moisture of the marshes. You can feel the soft ground under your sandals. In the distance a dog barks. And then silence again. Greece at this time is not the Greece of marble temples and grand philosophers. That comes later. Now it's a land of small city-states, each fiercely independent, often quarrelling, sometimes united only by necessity. Athens is one of them, restless, proud and fragile. Sparta stands far to the south, a land of soldiers who speak little and act swiftly. Between them lie dozens of smaller communities, bound by shared gods but divided by ambition and pride. Over the horizon, far beyond these quiet hills, lies a world of another kind, vast, glittering and powerful. The Persian Empire stretches like a golden blanket across Asia. From the shores of the Indus to the edge of the Aegean, its roads bind cities and cultures together under a single rule. In the east, the sun rises over Persepolis, the jewel of Darius the Great's domain. Its palaces gleam with carved reliefs of kings and warriors, messengers and servants, all moving in stately procession toward the throne of their ruler. There, the air is perfumed with incense, and the sound of sandals on marble echoes through columned halls. But tonight, you're still on the Greek shore, a tiny corner of a vast world. The stars above you are cold and clear, scattered like spilled grain across the black velvet of the sky. They seem eternal. They have watched countless empires rise and fall. Somewhere among them, the gods themselves are said to dwell, watching, waiting, sometimes intervening, sometimes not. For now they are silent. Perhaps they're holding their breath. You walk farther along the coastline. The sand crunches beneath your feet. In the distance you see a faint glow, the light of a fire on a small fishing boat. Two men huddle near it, their voices carried faintly by the wind. You can't make out their words, but you hear the rhythm, one worried, one calm. Maybe they're talking about the rumours that have begun to spread. Rumours of ships, not fishing boats, not traders, but something much larger, spotted near the islands to the east. Ships with black sails, rowed by men who speak strange tongues. Ships that come from far beyond the horizon. The men lower their voices, glancing toward the dark water. They don't know what's coming, but they feel it. Like animals before a storm, they sense the change in the air. It's heavier now, charged. The wind seems to have a direction again, blowing not just over the sea but toward something, toward Marathon. You sit by the shore and listen. The waves lap closer. Somewhere an owl calls from a cypress tree. You can almost imagine what it feels like to live in that world, a time when every sound in the dark might be a god, every wind a message. The people of this land believe in omens. They watch the flight of birds, the colour of the sunset, the patterns of smoke rising from altars, and lately the signs have not been good. Fires that burn too brightly, storms that strike without warning, strange stillness in the fields. Something is coming. And yet, in Athens, life goes on. The city hums with its usual rhythm, merchants haggling, craftsmen hammering, citizens arguing in the agora. They are proud of their democracy, still young and fragile, built after the fall of tyrants. They believe in their freedom, but they are not yet sure what it costs to keep it. In the assembly, voices rise, some urging caution, others calling for courage. Names like Miltiades, Aristeas, and Themistocles echo in their marble hall, men who will soon be more than names. For now, though, Athens sleeps. Somewhere in the hills, a shepherd watches his flock under the stars, unaware that within a year, those same stars will shine down on blood and glory. The land itself seems to sense it, as if history is holding its breath. You close your eyes and feel the pulse of the night around you. The sea sighs and the earth beneath you hums faintly, as though alive. Somewhere in that hum is the beginning of the story. A story not of gods or kings, but of ordinary men who will do something extraordinary. They will run, they will fight, and they will become legends not because they sought it, but because they had no choice. You can almost see them, not yet in their bronze helmets and heavy shields, but as farmers, potters, fishermen, men who rise at dawn, whose hands are rough, whose lives are simple. They don't yet know their place in the grand sweep of time. None of them imagine that centuries later children will learn their names, that thousands of years later the word marathon will mean endurance itself. Tonight they sleep soundly, unaware that the gods have already chosen them. A wind rises. It carries the scent of the east, spices, smoke, and something else. The Persians are moving. Their ships cut through the sea like silent predators. Hundreds of them, perhaps more. Each one sleek, black, and deadly. Each one carrying men hardened by conquest, veterans of campaigns across deserts and mountains. They come not just to fight, but to punish. Athens, bold little Athens, had dared to defy the great king, had dared to help rebels in Ionia. Darius does not forget. On those ships, oars creak in unison. The rowers' faces are blank, their backs slick with sweat. Above them, commanders watch the horizon, waiting for the first sight of land. The Aegean winds fill their sails, and the stars above guide them westward toward revenge. Back on the Greek shore, the wind changes direction again. The fishermen glance at each other. They can't say why, but they know something has begun. The night feels heavier, thicker. Even the crickets have gone quiet. You look back toward the hills. In the faint moonlight, the outlines of olive trees stretch across the slopes like a dark sea of their own. Somewhere up there, a dog barks again, a sharp warning sound, and then fades into silence. The first step in a long chain of fate has been taken. Tomorrow, someone will wake early and notice a distant shadow on the water. A line of ships, perhaps. Tomorrow, messengers will be sent racing toward Athens. Tomorrow, words will spread that will shake the heart of Greece. The Persians have landed. But tonight, the land still sleeps. The stars burn cold and indifferent above the plain. The reeds sway, whispering their endless song. And you, sitting there by the water's edge, can feel history moving beneath the surface, slow and unstoppable, like the tide. For now, breathe deeply. We listen to the sea. The story is only beginning. The night fades slowly into the palest grey. You're still there on the edge of the Aegean, where the wind hums softly and the scent of salt clings to your clothes. The horizon begins to glow, not bright, not yet, just a slow blush of light pressing through the thin veil of dawn. You can almost feel the world turning, the earth's slow exhale as another day begins. You hear the first gulls cry. They circle above the quiet plain, calling out to the sea as if to wake it. The tide murmurs back, the light spreads a little more, touching the water, painting ripples in gold. And far, far away, beyond what you can see, another world stirs. The Persian world, vast and shimmering like the desert heat. Imagine it. The sun rising over Persepolis, the heart of an empire. You walk through halls lined with columns so tall you must tilt your head to see their carved tops. Lions and bulls face each other in an eternal struggle across stone walls. Reliefs of kings holding their sceptres, guards standing in silent ranks, and messengers bearing tribute from every corner of the known earth. You can hear the distant sound of sandals on polished floors, the rustle of silk, the faint jingle of gold jewellery. The air smells of incense, myrrh, and cedar oil. This is the world of Darius the Great, a ruler whose empire stretches from the mountains of India to the shores of the Mediterranean. His rule is law, his word divine. He is not young now. The weight of the crown has pressed deep lines into his face. Yet his gaze is sharp, filled with the certainty of one who believes himself chosen by the gods, and he has reason to believe it. His empire is the largest the world has ever known, a tapestry of peoples, languages, and lands all tied together by the royal road and the will of a single man. But power, like the sea, is never still. It demands constant motion, and somewhere in the back of Darius's mind a thorn has taken root, small but sharp. It came from the west, from a place so small it should not have mattered. Greece. Years earlier, when the Ionian cities under Persian rule rose in rebellion, Athens had dared to lend them aid. A tiny city-state sending ships against the great king's empire. It was like a child throwing pebbles at a lion. The rebellion failed, of course, crushed beneath Persian armies. But Darius did not forget. You can picture him there, standing on the terrace of his palace as the sun sets over the mountains. He looks westward, where the land falls away into the endless blue of the Aegean. Somewhere beyond that water lies Athens. His advisors approach, their robes trailing like shadows behind them. They speak softly of punishments, of tribute, of examples to be made. Darius listens, silent, his hands resting on the carved stone railing. At last he speaks a single sentence, calm, measured, but heavy as thunder. Athens will burn. From that moment the wheels begin to turn. Messengers ride out from Persepolis, their horses pounding the dust of the royal road. Orders are given in Susa, in Sardis, in every satrapy along the way. The empire begins to move, slowly at first, like a sleeping giant shifting its weight. Ships are built in the harbours of Phoenicia and Egypt, sleek and strong, their hulls painted in black pitch. Supplies are gathered. Grain, oil, wine, arrows, spears. Soldiers are called from across the empire. Medes, Persians, Egyptians, Carians, even islanders from the Aegean who have already submitted to Persian rule. The army swells, an ocean of men and will. You can almost hear the sound of it, the clatter of weapons, the murmur of thousands of voices in 100 tongues, the deep rumble of drums as ships are hauled down to the water. It is not a sound of haste. The Persians do not rush. They move with the steady patience of empire, certain, unstoppable, inevitable. Back in Greece, the news travels like lightning. Sailors bring word of ships gathering in Asia Minor. Merchants whisper of emissaries demanding submission. The Persians, they say, have sent heralds to the Greek cities, bearing a simple message: give us earth and water. Symbols of obedience. Some cities comply. They bow their heads and offer tribute, knowing the cost of defiance. But others, proud, defiant, refuse. Among them, Athens and Sparta. When the Persian heralds arrive in those cities, their fate is swift. The Spartans, blunt as ever, throw them into a well. There, they say, you will find plenty of earth and water. In Athens, the crowd does not hesitate. The heralds are executed before they can even deliver their message. For Darius, this is no longer about rebellion. It is about insult. It is about pride. The Athenians have spat in the face of the empire. They must be taught their place. So once again, the great machine begins to turn. The first expedition, led by his general Mardonius, sets out across Thrace and Macedonia. But the gods, or perhaps the winds, intervene. Storms wreck the fleet off Mount Athos, and thousands of men are lost. The campaign fails. Darius does not waver. He will send another. This time he chooses commanders he trusts, Datis the Mede and Artaphernes, his nephew. Their task: sail directly across the Aegean, subdue the islands, punish Athens, and return with captives. A simple mission on paper. The fleet gathers at Cilicia. Over 600 ships, some say more than 1,000, line the coast, their sails furled, waiting for the wind. Soldiers board in orderly silence, rowers take their benches, and officers shout commands that echo across the harbour. When the wind rises, the sea comes alive with motion. Black hulls cut through the waves, banners snapping in the breeze. You can imagine standing on the deck of one of those ships. The sun burns against your back, the salt spray stings your face, and the rhythmic beat of the oars shakes the wood beneath your feet. The fleet moves like a single creature, hundreds of ships breathing and moving as one. They pass by the islands, Naxos, which burns again after its failed rebellion, then Delos, where the Persians spare the temples out of respect for Apollo, then Euboea, where the city of Eretria falls after a brief siege. Its people are taken captive, bound in chains, and carried away to Asia. Athens is next. As the Persian ships round the tip of Euboea, the coast of Attica comes into view. The hills rise softly from the shore, and beyond them the plain of Marathon stretches wide and flat, perfect for cavalry and manoeuvring troops. A good place to land, to deploy, to fight. The Persians turn their ships toward it. The oars bite the water. Back in Athens, the news comes swiftly. Messengers arrive breathless, covered in dust. "They are coming," they cry. "The Persians have landed at Marathon." You can almost hear the sudden silence that follows. The city holds its breath. Then chaos. Citizens shouting, armour being fetched from storage, generals convening in the agora. The 10 strategoi, the elected commanders, meet with the polemarch Callimachus. Among them is Miltiades, the man who knows the Persians best. He speaks plainly. There is no time for politics, no time for fear. They must march now. The decision is not unanimous. Some argue for waiting, for defending the city itself. Others whisper that Sparta should be asked for help first. But Miltiades insists. If they let the Persians move inland, Athens will fall. The only chance is to meet them at Marathon. And so the call goes out. Across the hills and valleys of Attica, men are summoned, farmers, craftsmen, citizens. They gather at dawn, shouldering their shields and spears. You can see them in your mind's eye, lining up in the flickering light, faces set in quiet determination. Each carries a hoplon, a round shield of bronze and wood heavy enough to cover half his body. His spear is long, its iron tip glinting faintly in the sun. Over his chest he wears a cuirass of bronze or stiffened linen. On his head, a helmet with cheek guards that muffle sound, turning his own breath into a drumbeat. Sandals scuff against the dust. The army of Athens is marching. They move through the hills, past olive groves and shrines. Women stand by the roadsides, watching silently, clutching children to their sides. Some men wave back, others keep their eyes ahead. There is no cheering, no songs, just the sound of footsteps, the creak of leather straps, the clatter of shields. As they near Marathon, the air changes. The sea is close now. The scent of salt mixes with sweat and dust. And ahead, faintly at first, the sound of voices, foreign and deep, chanting in strange rhythms. The Persians are there. The Athenians halt on a ridge overlooking the plain. Below them, the enemy camp sprawls near the beach, tents like a field of white, ships drawn up in neat rows. Smoke curls from campfires, and in the distance glints of metal flash in the sun. The sight is breathtaking. The Persians seem endless, their banners fluttering like a forest of colour. The Athenians, perhaps 10,000 strong, stand watching, silent, awed, perhaps afraid. But they do not turn back. They make camp at the edge of the hills, beside the small stream that runs through the plain. The men rest, sharpen their spears, adjust their armour. Scouts are sent out, runners are dispatched, one to Sparta to beg for aid. His name is Pheidippides. As night falls, the plain grows quiet again. The stars return as bright as ever. 2 armies sleep within sight of each other, separated only by a stretch of moonlit grass and destiny. The wind shifts once more, carrying the faint smell of the sea through both camps. And far away, in Persia, Darius dreams of Phit. The wind has cooled by dawn, carrying the chill of the sea inland. You open your eyes to find the plain of Marathon bathed in pale gold. The light spills softly across the hills, touching the edges of shields, glinting on spear points, and turning the morning mist into a shimmering veil. You can almost hear the faint rattle of armour, not the sound of war yet, but of men preparing for it, of routine movements done in silence because the stakes are too high for chatter. Athens stands behind them miles away, quiet, uncertain, vulnerable. But here on the plain, 10,000 men breathe the same air, stand on the same soil, and know in their hearts that they cannot turn back. This is where they must make their stand. The men of Athens had never fought such an enemy before. They had faced rivals, raiders, and even tyrants, but never an empire. Never soldiers who had crossed seas with the confidence of gods. To the Greeks, the Persians seemed limitless, a people from the edge of the world, rich, disciplined, and strange. And yet here they were, close enough to see the gleam of their armour, the strange curve of their bows, the flowing fabrics that shimmered under the sun. The Persians camped near the shore, their ships drawn up like sleeping whales on the sand. Above them, their banners fluttered in colours unknown to Greek eyes. Deep crimson, gold, azure, symbols of fire and winged lions. The Athenians, in contrast, looked plain, bronze and leather, wool and linen. But beneath the simplicity there was something else, something quiet and iron-bound. They were citizens, not subjects. They fought not for tribute or for a king's command, but for the right to decide their own fate. That belief, small as a spark, would soon become fire. Among the Greek commanders gathered that morning, one man's voice carried more weight than the rest. Miltiades. He had seen the Persians before years ago, when he had ruled in the Chersonese under their dominion. He had fought them, served beside them, and fled from them. He knew their methods, their confidence, their and their weaknesses. He stood before the assembled strategoi, his eyes shadowed beneath his helmet. The council was divided. Some argued they should wait for Sparta. The runners had gone, but the Spartans were bound by their own sacred calendar. They would not march until the full moon. That meant at least 6 days. 6 days the Persians could use to fortify, to move inland, or worse, to sail around Cape Sunion and strike Athens directly while the army was away. Miltiades spoke quietly, but with fire beneath each word. "If we wait," he said, "we lose. If we fight here, on this ground, we stand a chance. The Persians trust in their archers and cavalry, but here," he gestured toward the marshes and uneven plain, "their horses will struggle. Their arrows will fall short if we close the distance. We are heavier, stronger, and if we strike first, we can break them." Some of the commanders hesitated. To attack the might of Persia with such a small force seemed madness. But Miltiades was relentless. He turned to the polemarch Callimachus, whose vote would decide. "Athens," he said, "hangs upon this moment. If we fail here, the city burns and our people are enslaved. But if we win," his voice faltered for a breath, "if we win, we show the world that free men can stand against kings." The tent fell silent. Callimachus nodded slowly. His voice, when it came, was firm. "Then we fight." That night, the Athenians slept lightly, their dreams restless with the weight of what was coming. Fires flickered across the camp, sending thin streams of smoke into the star-filled sky. Somewhere a lyre was playing, soft, hesitant notes, like a lullaby for men who may never wake. You walk among them quietly, hearing the sounds of 1,000 small things, the whisper of whetstones against blades, the murmur of prayer, the slow, steady breathing of men curled beneath their cloaks. There is fear here, yes, but not despair, fear that sharpens, not paralyzes. A few paces away you see Miltiades standing at the edge of the camp, gazing down at the Persian fires below. He doesn't move for a long time. Perhaps he's thinking of strategy, of distances, of timing, of formations. Or perhaps he's thinking of Athens, and of how fragile freedom can be, how easily it can slip away if not defended. The stars shimmer above him, ancient and silent witnesses. The night deepens, the air cools, and you can almost feel the weight of the world pressing closer. At dawn, the camp stirs. The men rise, stretching sore limbs, tightening straps, checking shields. The dew glistens on the grass. Someone murmurs a prayer to Athena. Another spits into the dirt and whispers to Ares. They move not with bravado, but with the quiet efficiency of men who know that courage isn't loud, it's steady. The Athenian line forms along the edge of the hills. 10 tribes, each commanded by its strategos. In the centre, Miltiades watches as ranks take shape, shield locking against shield, forming an unbroken wall of bronze and will. Their formation is odd by Greek standards. Miltiades orders the wings to thicken, each 8 men deep, while the centre is thinned to only 4. It's a gamble, a deliberate weakening of the middle to strengthen the flanks. The Persians, expecting a straightforward clash, will aim for the centre, but when they press forward, the Athenian wings will envelop them from both sides like a closing trap. It's brilliant, it's desperate, and it's their only chance. Down below, the Persians begin to form their lines as well. Drums beat softly, steady as a heartbeat. The air fills with the low thrum of voices, orders shouted in Persian, Median, Elamite, and tongues even older. Their ranks gleam with bright fabrics and polished armour. Archers take their positions, cavalry horses snort and stamp the ground, their riders adjusting curved bows, the light glinting off gold ornaments. Datis, one of the Persian commanders, watches from a raised platform. He sees the Greeks forming up in the distance, so few of them, so small compared to the host he commands. He smiles faintly. To him this is routine, another campaign, another victory. The gods of these small western lands have no power against the Empire of Persia. He signals to his archers, they ready their bows, the strings taut. But the Greeks do not wait. At a signal from Miltiades, the Athenian line begins to move. Slowly at first, shields up, the rhythm of sandals striking dirt like a muffled drum, then faster still. They are running. Imagine it. 10,000 men charging across the plain, armour gleaming, spears levelled, shouting a cry that echoes like thunder. Hello! The sound rolls over the ground, over the marshes, over the Persian front lines, a sound that carries both fear and defiance. The Persians, startled, scramble to respond. Archers raise their bows, loosing volleys of arrows that hiss through the air like a storm of black rain. Some find their marks, shields ring with impact, men fall, but the line does not break. The hoplites keep coming, faster, closer, unstoppable. The distance closes, 100 yards, 50. Then, impact. The front lines crash together with the sound of thunder. Spears splinter, shields shudder, men grunt and shout. The Persian centre, light and flexible, bends beneath the sheer weight of bronze. For a moment it seems the Greeks might drive straight through, but the centre is thin and the Persians press in. The Greek line wavers. The Persians begin to push. For a heartbeat, defeat seems possible, the kind that comes all at once when courage falters and fear takes hold. But then the wings move. The Athenian flanks, thicker and stronger, surge forward and inward. They strike the Persian sides like hammers, trapping them between the closing jaws of the phalanx. Confusion ripples through the Persian ranks. Commands are shouted, but the press of bodies, the weight of shields, the chaos of close combat make them useless. The Greeks fight not as individuals, but as one organism, each man's shield protecting the one beside him, each thrust of a spear an extension of the whole. The air is filled with the metallic tang of blood, the crack of wood, the cries of men. And through it all, Miltiades moves along the line, his voice hoarse but steady, urging his men forward. This is no longer strategy now. It is survival. By midday, the Persian line begins to break. The centre collapses under the crushing pressure from both sides. Men throw down their weapons, stumbling toward the ships, tripping over the dead. The sea, so calm in the morning, churns now with panic. The Athenians press them all the way to the shore. The sand is slick with blood and salt. Persians try to push their ships back into the water, but the Greeks are upon them. They seize 7 vessels before the rest escape. The surviving Persians scramble aboard, their oars thrashing at the sea as they retreat from the coast. From the deck of his flagship, Datis watches the plain recede. The smoke, the chaos, the unthinkable sight of Persians fleeing from Greeks. He cannot understand it. This was not how it was supposed to go. On the beach, the Athenians stand in silence, their chests heaving, the heat of battle fading into exhaustion. Around them lie 6,000 Persian dead. Fewer than 200 Greeks have fallen, and yet, in the stillness that follows, no one cheers. Not yet. They are too tired, too stunned, too aware of what they've survived. The sun is high now, and the wind carries the scent of salt and blood and victory. The plain of Marathon, once silent, is now a graveyard and a beginning. The men stand together, shields resting against the earth, spears pointed toward the sea, watching the last Persian ships vanish over the horizon. They do not yet know that what they've done will echo through millennia, that centuries from now their name will be spoken with awe, and the place where they stood will be remembered not as a battlefield, but as a promise that even the mightiest empire can be stopped by courage and will. The sea sighs, the wind still hums, and you, standing there among them, can almost feel the history catch its breath. The smell of the sea still hangs over the plain of Marathon. Salt, blood, and smoke mingled into a single heavy scent that clings to your clothes and settles deep into the earth. The sun has begun to dip, its gold light turning red as it brushes the edges of the hills. It's the kind of sunset that in another life might be beautiful, but here it's painted over death. You stand on the quiet shore, among men who are too tired to speak. The crash of the waves is the only sound now. The shouts, the clatter, the screams, they're all gone. Only the breathing remains, the steady, weary breath of 10,000 Athenians who have lived through what no one thought possible. A few feet away, Miltiades kneels beside the fallen. His armour is dented, his face streaked with grime and sweat. He doesn't look like a hero. He looks like a man who has carried something too heavy for too long. Around him lie bodies, Greek and Persian alike, tangled in the mud, faces turned toward the same indifferent sky. The victors move among them quietly, searching for the living, helping the wounded, whispering the names of friends and brothers to the air. Each name rises and vanishes like smoke. They will build mounds for the dead soon, great earthen tombs that will stand for centuries. But tonight, there's only the solemn work of tending and remembering. One man, his arm wrapped in a torn bandage, stands staring out to sea. You can follow his gaze. The horizon is empty now, save for the faint specks of Persian ships retreating into the dusk. They'll carry word of this defeat back to Asia, back to Darius. You can almost imagine the silence that will fall in the Persian court when the great king learns that his invincible army has been turned back by a city of farmers and craftsmen. It will not be the end, but it will be a beginning. Night falls slowly, wrapping the plain in a thin shroud of mist. The Greeks build fires, not for celebration, but for warmth and light as they tend to the wounded. Sparks drift upward like tiny stars, and in their glow, you see exhaustion etched into every face. Some men sit in silence, their eyes distant. Others murmur softly to one another, not boasts or laughter, but small fragments of disbelief. "Did we truly?" one says. "We did," another answers, though his voice is barely more than a whisper. Somewhere among the tents, an old soldier hums an ancient tune. The sound weaves through the camp, low and steady, like a lullaby from the time before all this. You can almost feel it settle into your bones, the kind of song that doesn't celebrate victory but mourns the cost of it. Miltiades gathers the commanders. They stand in a circle lit by a single torch, its flame bending with the sea breeze. The air smells faintly of pine and sweat and the metallic tang of blood. Callimachus, the polemarch, is dead, struck down during the fighting near the Persian ships. Aristides, quiet and solemn, stands with his hands clasped behind his back. The others look to Miltiades, waiting. He speaks slowly. The Persians will not rest. Even now they may sail around the cape to attack Athens itself. We must march, tonight. The men nod, weariness flickering in their eyes, but not hesitation. They understand, the Persians are cunning, the sea is open to them. If they cannot win on land, they will strike at what Athens holds most dear, its people undefended, unaware. And so as the fires die down, the Athenian army prepares to move again. Before dawn, the men gather their gear. The bodies of the fallen are left under guard. Their burial will come later. For now, there is no time. The air is cool, the stars still visible, and the faint silver of the moon paints the shields like ghostly halos. No one speaks much. They know the road ahead will be long, nearly 26 miles over rugged hills, dusty paths, and winding trails. They are exhausted from battle, their legs heavy, their throats dry. But they march anyway, because behind them lies victory, and ahead of them lies home. You walk with them, step by step, feeling the rhythm of their movement. The soft crunch of sand, the whisper of fabric, the occasional clink of bronze. The dawn slowly brightens, revealing the landscape in shades of grey and gold. The olive groves stretch endlessly, their silver leaves rustling softly in the morning wind. Somewhere among the ranks, a man begins to sing a slow, deep melody, more chant than song. It's taken up by others, quietly at first, then louder, until the sound rolls across the hills like distant thunder. The words are simple, a prayer to Athena, a plea for strength, for endurance, for the safety of the city they love. Their feet ache, their shoulders burn, but they do not stop. By midday, the heat grows. The road winds through valleys and rises into steep slopes, and the men's shadows stretch long and thin across the ground. Dust clings to their legs, sweat streaks their faces. Some falter for a step, then recover. Not one turns back. Among them runs a figure apart, lighter, faster, unarmoured. Pheidippides. The messenger who once ran to Sparta now runs again, carrying not a plea but a triumph. His body is a map of exhaustion, muscles trembling, lungs burning, yet he does not slow. His sandals slap the earth in a rhythm older than the word marathon itself. You can hear his breath, ragged, shallow, desperate, but each exhale carries a single thought, a single purpose. Athens must know. He runs through the olive groves, past farms and villages, past shepherds who stop and stare at the dust rising behind him. He runs with the memory of those who fell still burning in his mind, their faces flickering before him like ghosts urging him onward. When he crests the final hill, the city spreads before him, Athens bathed in the pale gold of afternoon light. The walls gleam faintly in the distance. He stumbles once, catches himself and keeps going. Meanwhile, behind him, the army continues its march. The terrain shifts from open plain to narrow paths bordered by rock and scrub. The sound of their footsteps is steady now, the sound of resolve. They are tired, yes, but they are also driven by something more, the knowledge that they have already done the impossible. And somewhere on the horizon, the Persian ships move again. Datis has not given up. He knows he cannot face the Greeks on land now, but he hopes to strike Athens undefended, to take the city and salvage some measure of victory. His ships hug the coastline, sails billowing, oars flashing in the light. He believes time is on his side, but the Athenians move faster than he imagines. They march through the night, through pain and hunger and weariness, guided by sheer will. When dawn rises again, the hills of Athens come into view, and as the Persian fleet rounds Cape Sunion ready to strike, they see something unexpected. An army. The men of Marathon stand on the shore, armour gleaming, shields raised. They have beaten the Persians once and they are ready to do it again. From the decks of their ships, the Persians stare in disbelief. This cannot be. The same men they fought yesterday? The same men now here, waiting? It seems impossible, unnatural. The sea breeze carries no sound of fatigue, no sign of fear. Datis hesitates. He orders his ships to slow. The risk is too great now. To land against a fresh army, even if it should not be fresh at all. Slowly, reluctantly, the Persian fleet turns away. The sails catch the wind, and the ships retreat eastward back across the Aegean. In Athens, bells ring. The people rush to the walls, to the harbour, to the hills to see the returning soldiers. The city erupts, not in noise, but in the trembling relief that comes after nearly losing everything. Women weep openly, children run through the streets shouting. The elders raise their hands in prayer. And then, through the gates, comes Pheidippides. His tunic is soaked with sweat, his feet bloodied, his face pale as marble. He stumbles into the agora, surrounded by a crowd that presses close, shouting questions, names, hopes. He lifts his head, eyes bright with fever and triumph. His voice is barely more than a whisper. "Rejoice," he says, "we are victorious." And with that, he falls. The crowd surges forward, but he is already gone. His heart stilled, his breath spent. He has given his life for the message he carried. By evening, the army enters the city. The cheers are subdued, almost reverent. The Athenians have seen too much death to celebrate loudly. They know that what they have won was not guaranteed, not inevitable. It was wrested from the edge of ruin by courage, discipline, and the simple, stubborn refusal to yield. Miltiades walks at the head of the column, his face unreadable. Around him, the citizens bow their heads. There will be time for gratitude later. For now, there is only silence and the strange, fragile peace that comes when fear is finally lifted. That night, the fires burn again, but but this time they are watchfires of safety, not battle. The sky above Athens is clear and full of stars, the same stars that had watched over the plain of Marathon. They seem brighter now, as if the gods themselves have taken note. You lie back on the cool earth, staring upward, listening to the faint hum of the city settling into sleep. Somewhere an owl calls from the Acropolis. The air is sweet with olive and smoke, and for the first time in days you can finally breathe. The city sleeps beneath a sky of silver stars, but you, listening, can still hear faint echoes of the day before. The soft tramp of tired feet, the murmur of prayers, the whisper of names spoken to the dead. Athens has been saved. The Persians are gone. Yet the air feels strange tonight, too still, too fragile, as if the city itself isn't sure how to exist in peace after standing so close to destruction. You walk through the narrow streets, the lamps burn low, their flames flickering against whitewashed walls. Somewhere a dog barks once and then falls silent. The stones under your sandals are cool now, washed clean by the sea breeze that drifts up from the harbour. For a moment, it's hard to believe that only days ago this same city trembled in fear, that the people you pass now, sleeping behind closed doors, once thought they might wake to the sound of Persian horns. Now they rest. The war for them is over, but for the men who fought, sleep does not come easily. At the edge of the city, near the sanctuary of Heracles, the Athenian army lies encamped. They are heroes now, or will be once the stories are told. But tonight, they are simply men too tired to think. Some sleep where they dropped, their helmets still on, their shields resting against their shoulders. Others sit awake beside dying fires, staring into the embers, lost in their own quiet thoughts. You can almost feel their exhaustion, the kind that seeps into the bones that no rest can quickly undo. Yet beneath it there's something else, a slow-growing sense of wonder, of disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had faced the greatest power in the world and held their ground. But what now? Victory, for all its glory, leaves a silence behind. A space where fear used to live. And into that silence comes the memory, the faces of the fallen, the weight of what it took to win. Miltiades moves among the men. His limp is more noticeable now, his arm bound where a Persian spear grazed it. The soldiers nod to him as he passes, some out of respect, others out of something deeper, something close to gratitude. They know it was his strategy, his insistence that brought them here. Without him, Marathon might have been their grave. He stops near one of the fires. The light casts long shadows across his face. "Rest," he says simply. "You've earned it." One of the younger soldiers looks up at him. "Will they come back, sir?" Miltiades doesn't answer at first. His gaze drifts toward the dark horizon where the sea meets the stars. When he finally speaks, his voice is quiet, almost lost to the wind. "Yes, empires always come back." The words hang there, heavy, before the night swallows them. At dawn, the city awakens to the sound of bells and distant chanting. The people gather on the hillsides overlooking the plain, their robes whipping in the morning breeze. Priests move among them, carrying bowls of oil, laurel branches and incense. The victory must be honoured. The gods must be thanked. You stand among the crowd as the procession begins. It moves slowly, winding down from the city walls toward the sea. Women scatter flower petals in the dust. Men carry garlands of olive and oak. Children follow, clutching sprigs of myrtle in their small hands. At the front, a white bull walks calmly, led by a rope of woven reeds. Its hide gleams in the sunlight, and on its horns hang bronze rings engraved with prayers to Athena, to Zeus, to Nike, the goddess of victory. The people reach the temple at Phaleron, where the sea glimmers blue and calm beyond the altar. The priests light the incense. The smoke rises in graceful spirals, curling into the wind, carrying their gratitude toward the heavens. You can smell the burning myrrh, sharp and sweet. It mingles with the salt air and the faint scent of wild thyme from the hills. The crowd bows their heads as the prayers begin. The words are ancient, older even than the city itself. Words of thanks, of humility, of hope that this day will be remembered. Later, the soldiers march home in solemn procession. Not triumphant, not shouting, but steady and proud. The people line the streets, silent as they pass. Mothers press their hands to their hearts. Old men bow their heads. Children clutch the edges of their mothers' robes and stare wide-eyed at the shining helmets, the dented shields, the faces of men who have looked death in the eye and returned. At the head of the line, the city's sacred standard flutters in the breeze, the owl of Athena watching. Behind the soldiers come the fallen, not their bodies, for they remain buried near Marathon, but their names, inscribed on tablets carried high by youths in white tunics. Each name read aloud one by one as the people listen. The names go on for a long time, too long, and yet not nearly long enough. When the last is spoken, the crowd exhales as one, a collective sigh that feels almost like release. That night in the Agora, torches burn bright as the assembly gathers. The air hums with conversation, and not of politics this time, but of gratitude, of awe. The city's elders speak of honour, of sacrifice, of how this victory will live forever in the hearts of men. But even as the speeches rise and fall, Miltiades stands apart near the edge of the crowd, his expression distant. He listens, but his thoughts are elsewhere, perhaps already on what must come next. Because he knows what few others do, this victory is only the first chapter. Darius will not accept defeat. The great king's pride is a force of nature, and somewhere beyond the Aegean, the empire is already stirring again. Still, for this one night, the people allow themselves to breathe freely. The streets fill with quiet celebration, music, wine, laughter carried on the warm evening air. You can hear the pluck of lyres, the soft beat of hand drums, the gentle hum of voices singing songs of the gods and of men. Children chase each other through the torchlight. Old soldiers clasp hands and share cups of wine, the firelight flickering in their eyes. A woman lights a small lamp and places it on a windowsill for her husband, who did not return, whispering his name as the flame wavers. Athens, the fragile, defiant city, feels alive again. Far away, across the dark water, the Persian fleet sails through the night. The decks are quiet now, the oars dip in steady rhythm. Datis stands at the prow, his cloak snapping in the wind. His face is unreadable, part fury, part disbelief. He has lost something more than a battle. He has lost certainty. He stares out at the endless sea toward the invisible line where water meets sky. Behind him lies the smouldering shadow of defeat. Ahead, the empire, vast, powerful, and soon demanding answers. He knows Darius will not forgive failure. The thought gnaws at him like a hidden wound. But he also knows something else, something colder. This war is not over, not yet. Back in Athens, dawn breaks again. The sky blushes with pink and gold, and the city stirs to life. Merchants open their stalls. Fishermen carry their nets to the harbour. Children laugh, their voices bright and careless. For them, the memory of fear has already begun to fade. But for those who stood at Marathon, it will never leave. In dreams, they will hear the rush of running feet, the thud of arrows, the cries of dying men. They will wake in the night and smell the sea and feel again the weight of the spear in their hand. Some will grow old and tell their grandchildren about the day they stood against the Empire of Persia. Others will remain silent, keeping the memory tucked deep inside where words cannot reach it. And yet every one of them will carry the same quiet truth, that freedom is never secure, that it must be won again and again with courage and with pain. You walk through the city one last time before dawn gives way to full light. The air is cool and fresh, filled with the faint smell of fig trees and stone warmed by yesterday's sun. You stop near the Parthenon's foundations still being built, still rough and unfinished, and you look east, where the first light touches the hills of Marathon. From here, you can almost see the plain in your mind, the long stretch of grass, the whispering reeds, the sea beyond. The place where history bent just slightly toward the improbable. And you realise that what happened there was not the victory of gods or kings, but of something smaller, more fragile, and infinitely stronger. The courage of ordinary men who refuse to kneel. The wind shifts. The first bells of morning ring through the city. The world is still young, and already it has been changed forever. Morning breaks gently over Athens. The first shafts of light slip down the hillsides and spill into the narrow streets, catching on rooftops and window shutters. The air is still, as if the world itself hesitates to move after all that has passed. For days now, the city has lived in a kind of waking dream, caught between triumph and disbelief, between the pulse of survival and the weight of what survival costs. You walk again through the city's quiet heart, the Agora. Merchants have begun to return to their stalls. There are figs and olives laid out in baskets, amphorae of oil gleaming in the new sun. and the low hum of early barter rising like music. Life, tentative but steady, resumes. Yet beneath it runs a current of awe, an awareness that this ordinary bustle now unfolds in a world that is not quite the same as before. The people speak softly, as though afraid to disturb the fragile peace. They glance toward the Acropolis, where smoke from the altars drifts upward in curling grey ribbons. Every temple smells of incense now. Offerings crowd the steps, wreaths, small clay figurines, bowls of wine left for Athena and Zeus, for Nike and Ares. The gods, they say, must be thanked, for without their favour no mortal could have turned back an empire. But not everyone believes that the gods alone made this victory. Far above the city, where the air is clearer and the wind whispers over the stone, Miltiades stands alone on a terrace overlooking the sea. From here the horizon stretches endless and blue. He can almost see the curve of the world, the invisible line where the Persians fled into the distance. He should feel peace, perhaps pride. Instead, there's a heaviness in his chest, a strange unease that won't leave him. He knows what few others can yet see, that Marathon is not the end. It is only the beginning. Empires don't die from a single wound. They gather their strength, and they come again. The morning light catches the edges of his armour, making it glow faintly. The breeze tugs at his cloak, at the small scars along his face. His body is still sore from battle. Every muscle feels carved from stone, but his mind is already racing ahead, counting, planning, worrying. He hears footsteps behind him. Aristides approaches, calm and deliberate as always. His voice is low when he speaks. "The city celebrates," he says. "You should be there." Miltiades doesn't look away from the sea. "Let them celebrate," he murmurs. "They've earned it. But the Persians will return, and when they do we must be ready." Aristides nods slowly. They will, but perhaps not yet. Even empires must pause to breathe. Miltiades turns to him, eyes sharp. The great king does not pause, not for long. The two men stand in silence, the wind between them. Below, Athens hums softly, the faint sounds of a city trying to find its rhythm again. "You think of what comes next," Aristides says finally. Miltiades' lips curve in a weary smile. Always. That same day the assembly meets. The citizens fill the Pnyx, the open hill where Athens gathers to decide its fate. They sit shoulder to shoulder, the sunlight flashing off bronze helmets and polished shields. The air buzzes with excitement, pride, and the strange energy of shared purpose. Miltiades stands before them, flanked by the strategoi. His voice carries over the crowd, clear, steady, and strong despite his exhaustion. He speaks not of himself, but of Athens, of what they have proved, of how, for the first time, Greeks stood together and drove back the might of Asia. "Our strength," he says, "is not in numbers, nor in gold, nor in kings. It lies in this, that we are free men, and that freedom gives us the courage no tyrant's army can match." The words roll across the hillside, striking something deep within those who hear them. A murmur spreads, not applause exactly, but a kind of reverent agreement. Men glance at one another, their eyes bright with something new. Pride, yes, but also recognition. They have seen what unity can do. As the weeks pass, life settles into a quieter rhythm. The harvest season approaches. The fields outside the city shimmer with grain. The olives ripen on the branches, and the smell of pressed oil fills the air. The farmers who once stood at Marathon return to their ploughs. Their calloused hands grip wooden handles instead of spear shafts. But in their movements there's still the discipline of soldiers. The city's craftsmen return to their workshops, potters to their wheels, smiths to their forges, carpenters to their benches. Each one carries the memory of the battlefield somewhere behind his eyes, a reminder that every peaceful day is built on what they fought for. You can walk through the streets and see it, the small signs of change that history rarely records. A woman placing a fresh garland on an altar each morning. Boys chasing each other through the agora, pretending to fight Persians with sticks. A poet in the corner of a tavern, composing a verse about the gods who favoured Marathon. Life goes on, but underneath it flows a deeper awareness that the world has turned, that something immense has been set in motion. And yet, for Miltiades, peace is restless. He cannot stop thinking about the fleet that escaped, the ships that slipped away across the sea, the soldiers who will tell their king what they saw. Darius will rebuild. He will send another army, larger, stronger. When that happens, Athens must be ready. He begins to plan, to strengthen the city's defences, to study the coastline, to watch the other Greek states. Some, like Plataea, had fought beside them. Others had hesitated. And then there is Sparta, the silent ally, noble but bound by ritual and pride. Miltiades knows they will need Sparta one day. They will need all of Greece. But that unity, fragile and uncertain, cannot be forced. It must grow. Far across the Aegean, in the royal palace at Susa, messengers arrive from the west. They kneel before Darius, their faces pale with fear. They speak quickly, their voices trembling as they describe what happened, the battle, the loss, the retreat. For a long time the great king does not move. He sits on his golden throne, the carved lions at its base gleaming in the torchlight. The court is silent, even the musicians lower their instruments. When Darius finally speaks, his voice is soft. "Who are these men?" he asks. "Who dare stand against the empire?" No one answers. The question is not meant to be answered. Darius rises. His robe shimmers with gold thread, his crown heavy upon his brow. "Athens," he says slowly, tasting the name like a curse. "Athens will burn." The messengers bow so low their foreheads touch the floor. Orders will soon follow. New ships to be built. New soldiers gathered. New alliances forged. The empire will move again. Back in Greece, winter approaches. The nights grow longer, the winds colder. The memory of battle fades, but never disappears. When the storms roll in from the sea, you can almost hear the echo of oars, the hiss of arrows, the clash of shields. The people gather in their homes, around hearths that glow with orange light. They tell stories, and of gods and heroes, of storms and monsters. And now, among those tales, a new one begins to take shape. They tell of Marathon, of the men who ran into the storm and did not falter, of the runner who brought news of victory and fell with his last breath, of courage that defied the impossible. The story grows with each telling, like a flame fed by memory. Soon it will pass beyond the men who lived it into legend, and legend, as always, is stronger than truth. One night, under a cold, clear sky, Miltiades walks the plain again. The burial mounds rise gently from the earth, covered in grass. Torches flicker beside them, left by families who come to pray. He kneels beside the largest mound and presses his hand against the ground. Beneath this soil lie the men who made history. Farmers, potters, fishermen, names lost to time, except in this place. He whispers a promise. You will not be forgotten. The wind answers softly, bending the reeds, carrying the faint sound of the sea. Far above, the stars watch. The same stars that shone on that morning when the Persians came, the same stars that will shine long after all these men are gone. The air hums faintly with the sound of the night, that quiet vibration that only comes when the world is holding its breath. You stand there too, listening. The hum of the past seems to echo faintly beneath your feet. For now, peace has returned to Greece, but in the east the empire stirs once more. And though the people do not yet know it, the shadow that fell across the sea at Marathon is not gone. It is merely waiting, patient, gathering, vast as the tide itself. The wind off the Aegean carries a chill now, not harsh, just enough to remind you that the seasons are changing. The reeds along the marshes near Marathon sway in long, whispering waves. The plain is quiet again, but not empty. Beneath the grass, beneath the hum of insects and the lazy drift of sea air, the soil remembers. Every step you take feels heavy with what was done here, as though the earth itself holds its breath, unwilling to forget. You stand near the great burial mound, a long, soft rise in the land. The Greeks buried their dead together here, side by side, the living paying tribute to those who made their survival possible. There are no grand markers, no towering statues yet, just the simple weight of stone and earth above the fallen. But that, in its own way, feels sacred. The sun rises over the hills, the light touches the mound, the reeds, the still surface of the distant sea. For a moment, everything glows, gold and quiet. You can almost imagine that the gods themselves pause to look, to nod, to remember. The battle is over. The Persians are gone, but the story of what happened here has only just begun to grow. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months. The people of Athens move through their routines, planting, harvesting, rebuilding what was lost in fear's shadow. Yet beneath the rhythm of ordinary life, a hum of pride runs steady. You can hear it in the way men speak of Marathon at the Agora, in the way children play at being hoplites, striking each other's shields with sticks and laughing as they fall into the dust. You can see it in the faces of the old veterans sitting in the sun, their eyes distant but lit with quiet satisfaction. They do not boast. They do not need to. The land itself seems to whisper their story. But in one small house on the edge of Athens, a mother keeps a single shield hanging on her wall. It is dented, scratched, the bronze dulled by sea air and time. Sometimes she touches it softly, tracing the marks where a spear struck. Her son did not come back. Victory has a taste both sweet and bitter. And far away, across the sea, the Persian Empire grieves not for its dead, but for its dignity. The loss at Marathon is unthinkable, almost beyond comprehension. How could an empire that ruled from India to Egypt be humiliated by a few thousand men from a tiny rocky land at the edge of the world? In his palace at Susa, Darius listens to the reports. They are calm, formal, stripped of emotion, but even the most cautious words cannot hide the truth. He grips the armrest of his throne until the veins stand out in his hand. His face is stone, his eyes cold. He gives no great outburst, no shouts of rage. He simply says, "We will rebuild." Orders go out across the empire, to the shipwrights of Phoenicia, the smiths of Egypt, the soldiers of Lydia, the scribes and overseers and tax collectors who make the vast machine of Persia move. New fleets are to be built, new men trained. Tribute flows faster now, each shipment feeding a growing storm. Darius will not march himself this time. His armies will, and when they return to Greece it will not be to punish a rebellion, but to erase the insult of defiance. Meanwhile in Athens, Miltiades is restless. Victory has made him famous, beloved even, but also feared. The Athenians, proud of their democracy, are aware of men who grow too powerful. The line between hero and tyrant is thin, and Miltiades has walked close to it before. He spends his days studying maps, writing plans, urging the assembly to act, to build ships, to strengthen the navy, to prepare for what will surely come. But many of his fellow citizens are weary of war. They want rest, not warnings. The Persians are far away, they tell him. Let them stay there. Miltiades presses harder. They will not stay there, he insists. Empires move like the tide, always coming, never still. If we wait, they will drown us. But the assembly's attention drifts. The talk turns again to politics, to debts, to rivalries. Old divisions re-emerge like cracks in marble after the rain. Athens has won a battle, but unity, that fragile miracle, begins to fade. And yet, beyond the reach of politics, something deeper is shifting. The victory at Marathon has changed the way Greeks see themselves. For centuries, they have been a people divided, proud cities scattered like islands across a sea of land, tied by language and faith, but not by loyalty. Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, Athens, each fierce, each jealous, each convinced of its own greatness. But Marathon has shown them something new. For the first time, Greeks from different cities stood side by side, and Athenians and Plataeans fighting as one. For the first time, they saw that courage and freedom could bind them together more tightly than blood or trade. That idea, still small and fragile, begins to spread. It seeps into conversation, into art, into the songs sung at festivals. It is a seed, and though no one can yet see it, it has taken root. The Persians may still come, but the Greeks will never again see themselves quite the same way. You walk now through the fields beyond Athens, where spring has come again. The olive trees shimmer, silver green under the morning sun. Bees hum lazily among the blossoms. Somewhere a shepherd whistles to his flock. Life has reclaimed what war tried to take. In the distance you see a group of young men training, shields raised, spears flashing in the light, their shouts carrying faintly on the wind. They move with rhythm, with purpose. The elders watch from a distance. Their faces grave but proud. These are the next generation, boys who grew up hearing the name Marathon, spoken like a prayer. They will not remember the fear, only the courage. In the evenings, the storytellers come to the Agora. They bring their lyres and their soft melodic voices, weaving the battle into song. The tale changes with each telling. The Persians grow more terrible, the Athenians more valiant, the gods more involved. Some say it was Athena herself who guided Miltiades' hand. Others whisper that Artemis sent the winds that scattered the Persian fleet. A few speak of strange lights seen over the battlefield that night, the souls of the fallen rising to join the stars. You sit among the crowd, listening, the firelight flickering on their faces. The songs are beautiful, but beneath them you can feel the truth still pulsing, the raw human heartbeat of it all. Ordinary men, a desperate stand. The moment when fear became courage because there was no other choice. That is what endures long after the songs fade. Years will pass and the memory will harden into myth. Children will grow up knowing only that Athens once saved Greece at Marathon. The details, the sweat, the blood, the trembling hands, will blur softened by time. But the legacy will remain. Even now, far beyond Greece, in lands that know nothing of Athens or Persia, messengers run across deserts and mountains carrying news of war, of peace, of hope. The idea that one man's endurance can change the course of the world, that comes from this place, from this story. Marathon is not just a battle anymore. It is a symbol of distance endured, of will carried to the edge of exhaustion, of what happens when human spirit outruns its limits. As dusk falls again over the plain, you stand by the sea and listen. The tide murmurs softly, brushing against the shore where the ships once landed. The reeds sway, the stars emerge one by one, familiar and eternal. In their cold light, the world feels both vast and small, vast because of the distances the Persians once crossed, small because of how much one choice, one battle, can change everything. You breathe deeply, the air tastes of salt and memory, and somewhere in the quiet you can almost hear it again. The faint echo of running feet, the murmur of shields, the whisper of destiny in the wind. The gods are silent now, but the story is still speaking. The air over Greece is warmer again, the long breath of spring rising from the valleys and carrying the scent of thyme and olive blossom down to the sea. You can almost feel the softness in it, the promise that the land remembers peace as well as war. And yet, underneath that sweetness lies something else. Tension, faint but real, a vibration in the bones of the world. Because though months have passed since Marathon, the shadow of empire still hangs over the horizon. In the narrow streets of Athens, that shadow feels distant. The city hums with its ordinary rhythm. The clatter of merchants setting up their stalls, the calls of fishermen from the harbour, the distant echo of children laughing near the temples. The fear that once gripped every heart has loosened, replaced by pride. The people have grown bold again, confident in their new identity. They have seen the edge of destruction and stepped back from it stronger. But you can feel it, walking through the agora at dusk. That pride carries its own danger. Victories, even noble ones, can sour when men start to believe themselves invincible. Miltiades knows it. He can feel it in the way people greet him. Their eyes bright, their voices reverent. They call him Soter, saviour. They offer him gifts. Some whisper that he should lead Athens always, that no one else can guide her through the uncertain years to come. He listens politely, but inside he feels a knot tightening. He has seen what happens to men who believe such praise. He has seen tyranny and the slow poison of power. He will not let it take him, but already he senses the city turning as cities always do. Admiration shading toward envy, gratitude curdling into suspicion. At council meetings he speaks passionately of preparation, of defence. The Persians are rebuilding, he says. The great king's pride will not allow this defeat to stand. We must strengthen our fleet, control the sea, and we control our fate. Some agree. Themistocles, young and ambitious, listens carefully, his keen eyes calculating. He sees the future not in the bronze of spears, but in the wood of ships. Others, though, scoff. "You fought your battle, Miltiades," one elder says with a thin smile. "The gods favour Athens. Let them handle Persia next time." Miltiades clenches his jaw. The gods help those who help themselves, but the words fall into air too thick with complacency to carry far. Outside the walls, the world moves on, the Persians have not forgotten. In the east, Darius gathers his advisors and begins planning his next campaign. Maps are unrolled, messengers ride out across the empire, orders echo from Susa to Sardis. But before he can march again, rebellion strikes in Egypt, a spark that draws his fury, then his focus. The western campaign must wait. Years pass, the old king grows weaker. His voice, once thunderous, becomes thin with age. He dies before his vengeance can sail, and in his place rises another, Xerxes, his son, young, proud, brilliant, and burning with the same need to finish what his father began. Back in Athens, the seasons roll by. The scars of war fade from the land, but not from memory. Each year, on the anniversary of Marathon, the people gather on the plain. They light torches at dusk and carry them in slow procession toward the burial mound. The air fills with the sound of flutes and the murmur of prayers. You walk among them, seeing the faces lit by firelight, old men standing straight again, children holding their fathers' hands, mothers scattering flower petals into the wind. There is reverence here, yes, but also pride, and something more tender, a shared understanding of fragility. The priests pour libations of oil and wine onto the earth. The smell rises, rich, sweet, smoky, blending with the salt of the sea breeze. Someone recites the names of the dead. The voices of the people answer softly, may they be remembered. And for a moment the air seems to hum with presence, as if the ground itself breathes with them. The sea murmurs its endless song beyond the dunes. The stars shimmer above like the eyes of silent witnesses. Then, slowly, the torches are lowered, and the people begin their walk home. The plain returns to darkness, and the whisper of the reeds resumes. Miltiades watches these ceremonies from a distance. Each time he feels both pride and unease. The glory of Marathon has lifted Athens, yes, but it also binds it to his name, and that has begun to trouble the city's democracy. Themistocles, ambitious and eloquent, senses it too. He moves quietly through the corridors of power, building alliances, whispering visions of the sea. The empire that threatens us comes by ship, he tells the people, so our salvation must be built with timber. Under his urging, Athens begins to expand its naval power. Shipyards echo with the ring of hammers, forests are cut in the hills of Attica, new triremes slide into the water sleek and fast, their oars gleaming in the sun. Miltiades watches this with mixed feelings. He understands the necessity. The fleet is the city's future, but he also feels himself fading. The world is shifting again, and his kind of war, his kind of command, is already becoming old. Then, one spring, a chance for redemption or ruin. The island of Paros, rich and proud, defies Athenian authority. The people clamour for action. Let Miltiades lead, they say. He who defeated the Persians will bring Paros to heel. The general accepts, though his body is slower now, his spirit more worn. The expedition sails, but fortune has changed her face. The siege drags on. The walls of Paros hold firm. An accident, a fall, a wound, leaves Miltiades crippled. Defeated and humiliated, he returns to Athens. The same assembly that once cheered his name now turns on him. His enemies seize the moment. They accuse him of deceit, of tyranny, of leading Athens into war for his own gain. He stands before the court, his body failing, his leg bandaged, his voice still steady. I gave you Marathon, he says. Is that nothing? But the city is merciless in its moods. He is fined heavily, nearly ruined. He dies not long after, weakened by infection, embittered by the fickleness of the people he once saved. His son, Simon, will one day restore his name, but for now, the saviour of Marathon lies forgotten in a simple grave. The years slip by like waves. The hum of empire grows louder again across the sea. Xerxes builds roads, bridges, ships, thousands of them. He gathers armies so vast that they drink rivers dry. The great king will succeed where his father failed. In Athens, Themistocles' fleet takes shape, the wooden walls rising like a forest reborn. The sound of the shipwrights echoes through the valleys. The city prepares, as Miltiades once begged it to do. The people do not know it yet, but the gods are already turning their eyes toward Greece again. The next storm is coming. You stand once more on the plain of Marathon years after the battle. The wind still hums the same soft tune. The grass moves like water, and the mound of the dead glows faintly under the afternoon sun. Time here feels slower, thicker, as though each passing day leaves a faint echo behind it. You kneel and touch the earth. It is warm, alive, full of memory. Beneath your hand lie the men who gave Athens the time it needed, time to breathe, to build, to prepare for the storms that would come. The sound of distant waves rolls in, a reminder that beyond the horizon ships are gathering once more, their sails catching the same winds that blow over this sacred ground. You rise, brushing the dust from your hands, and listen. Somewhere far away a gull cries, and in the rustle of the reeds you can almost hear the faint, eternal whisper of destiny moving closer again. The sea is alive again. Its voice deepens with the coming wind, the kind that smells of salt and iron, the kind that always seems to carry omens. The morning light flashes silver off the Aegean waves, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the sails of an empire rise like pale ghosts against the sky. It has been 10 years since Marathon. 10 years of uneasy peace. 10 years of whispers from the east, and now, at last, the silence breaks. The great king's vengeance is coming. You stand on a rocky outcrop above the Attic coast. The air is sharp, clear, and heavy with anticipation. Below you, Athens hums like a hive preparing for flight. The harbour of Piraeus teems with motion. Oarsmen, shipwrights, carpenters, boys carrying water jars, men shouting orders. The clang of hammers echoes across the bay as the fleet takes form. Triremes, sleek and swift, their bronze rams gleaming in the sun. This is the fleet Themistocles dreamed of, the fleet Miltiades once begged for. Now, at last, it exists. More than 200 ships, each one a promise that Athens will never again be caught unprepared. Themistocles himself walks among them, cloak fluttering in the sea wind, voice calm and urgent all at once. He speaks to captains, to rowers, to shipbuilders. His presence is like the wind itself, restless, alive, necessary. The Persians are coming, he tells them. They will come not for conquest alone, but for revenge. We cannot meet them on land. The gods have given us another wall, one of wood and water. That will be our strength. Some nod in understanding, others still doubt. But Themistocles is relentless, and his conviction burns like fire. In his mind, the sea is salvation. He will turn the weakness of Greece into its weapon, and across that same sea the tide of Persia moves. Xerxes, son of Darius, has built an army so vast it defies imagination. They say it takes 7 days and 7 nights to cross a single bridge. They say the soldiers drink rivers dry and darken the earth with their numbers. From the plains of Asia Minor to the mountains of Armenia, from the deserts of Babylon to the shores of the Black Sea, they come. Persians, Medes, Egyptians, Phoenicians, Bactrians, Scythians, 100 nations bound by one king, one will. The roads tremble beneath their march. The ships, hundreds upon hundreds of them, move in dark lines across the water. When Xerxes reaches the Hellespont, the narrow strait that divides Asia from Europe, he finds it raging with storm. The first attempt to cross fails. His bridges of ships are destroyed by the sea's fury. Enraged, he orders the waters whipped, chained, cursed, and then rebuilt. When the bridges finally hold, the army crosses. Step by step, the tide of empire flows into Greece. Word spreads fast. From Thrace to Thessaly, from Boeotia to Attica, messengers ride day and night. The Greeks gather in council at Corinth, representatives from Athens, Sparta and other cities long divided by rivalry now forced to face the same fate. The meeting is tense. You can feel it. The air thick with suspicion. The old wounds between city-states reopening like scars rubbed raw. But beneath it all runs fear, shared and undeniable. It is Themistocles who speaks first. We must stand together, he says. If we fight as we did at Marathon, each city for itself, we will fall, but united, we are a wall no empire can break. The Spartans, grim and laconic, exchange glances. They will fight, they say, but on their terms, on land, where their strength lies. Athens, for its part, will command the sea. So it is decided. The Greeks will hold the mountain pass at Thermopylae. The fleet will meet the Persians at Artemisium, and all of Greece will hold its breath. The months pass like hours. The Persians sweep southward, unstoppable as a storm. Cities burn, others surrender. The world seems to shrink beneath their advance. You can see it in the faces of the Athenians, a mixture of fear and resolve. Families pack what they can carry, the city's elders debate evacuation. Themistocles stands before the assembly once again, his voice rising above the clamour. The oracle has spoken, he says. Athens shall be saved by wooden walls. The gods have told us our hope lies not in the stones of the city, but in the ships that ride the waves. We must abandon our homes. We must trust the sea. There is outrage, despair, but also belief, that strange, powerful thing that grows when all else seems lost. The people obey. Women, children, the old and the weak, all are sent across the straits to the island of Salamis. The city itself is left almost empty, its temples silent, its streets echoing under the sound of retreating footsteps. You walk through it as they leave, past doorways draped in woven charms, past statues garlanded with olive branches. The Acropolis gleams in the sun, serene and unmoving, as though it knows that stone can be broken but spirit cannot. Then come the fires. The Persians march into Attica. their banners fluttering red and gold in the wind. They find Athens deserted, a ghost city, but even that emptiness offends them. Xerxes orders it burned. You can almost see it. The smoke curling upward, the flames licking the marble temples, the black plumes rising like morning veils into the sky. The Parthenon's wooden roof collapses in sparks. The wind carries ashes across the sea to Salamis, where the refugees watch from the shore, their hearts breaking, their faith hardening into fury. Themistocles stands among them, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Let him burn the city," he says quietly. "He will find our spirit harder to destroy." At dawn the fleets meet. The Persian ships, vast and confident, fill the strait between Salamis and the mainland. Hundreds of dark hulls, oars flashing, banners snapping. The Greeks, fewer in number, lie in wait among the shallows, their smaller triremes hidden like knives in the folds of the sea. The air is tense. The water glows gold in the morning light. You can hear the creak of wood, the whisper of waves against hulls, the soft, rhythmic breathing of thousands of men waiting for a signal. And then the trumpet sounds. Themistocles raises his arm. The oars bite the water in unison. The ships surge forward, swift as hawks, bronze rams gleaming. The strait is narrow, too narrow for the Persians' numbers to matter. Their great fleet becomes tangled, trapped, unable to turn. The Greek triremes strike like lightning, ramming, boarding, breaking the enemy line. The sound is chaos. The crunch of wood, the shouts of men, the crash of waves. Smoke rises, mingling with the spray. Themistocles stands at the prow of his ship, shouting orders, his voice cutting through the storm. The gods themselves seem to lean close, their breath in the wind, their hands in the tide. By midday it is done. The sea is littered with wreckage. The Persian fleet, shattered, begins to retreat. From his throne on the shore, Xerxes watches, stunned, enraged, helpless. He has brought the greatest army the world has ever seen across continents, only to see it broken by men who fight not for empire, but for home. When the news reaches the mainland, the Greek armies hold fast. At Plataea, at Mycale, at last the tide turns. The Persians retreat eastward. Their bridges burn behind them. The shadow that once stretched over Greece begins to fade. And so the story that began at Marathon ends on the sea, a circle drawn by courage, by chance, by the will of those who refuse to kneel. But tonight, as you stand by the quiet shore of Salamis, the air smells not of fire but of salt and life. The waves murmur softly, washing over the rocks where once the dead drifted. The sky is full of stars, the same stars that watched over Marathon long ago. You can almost feel the echo between them, between the plain and the sea, between the two moments when Greece faced the impossible and won. The night is calm, the wind is cool, the gods perhaps are smiling. The sea has quieted. The stars above Athens shine steady again, no longer obscured by smoke. The Persians are gone. The people have returned to their city, to rebuild, to reclaim, to remember. The fires of vengeance that once blackened the marble have cooled, leaving behind only ash and memory. And yet, when you walk through Athens now, you can feel that the city itself has changed. It is not the same city that trembled before Marathon, nor the one that fled before Xerxes. It is something new, tempered, reborn, conscious of its strength. The air itself feels sharper, more alive. You can sense it in the rhythm of the streets, in the voices that rise from the agora at dawn. Athens has looked into the abyss, and now it begins to dream. The temples are rising again. You can see the scaffolds against the blue sky, men balanced high above the ground, their chisels flashing like sparks of sunlight as they carve marble blocks into form. The smell of fresh-cut stone and resin fills the air. Each blow of the hammer is both labour and offering, not only rebuilding what was destroyed, but declaring to the world that Athens will not vanish. Near the Acropolis, women carry baskets of figs and olive oil to the workers. Children chase each other through the dust. The Parthenon is not yet what it will one day become, but already you can see its bones, the symmetry, the grace, the ambition. The old wounds are closing, the city heals, and with healing comes purpose. At the assembly, the citizens gather again, thousands of them beneath the bright Attic sky. Themistocles stands before them, proud but measured. His hair has streaks of grey now, his voice deeper, but his eyes burn with the same fierce intelligence. He speaks not of war, but of what comes after. We have defended our freedom, he says. Now we must learn to habit, to build not only walls of stone, but walls of thought, of art, of reason. Let Athens become more than a city of warriors. Let it be the mind of Greece. The people listen, and for once they do not argue. There is something in his words that stirs them, a vision beyond survival, beyond the battlefield. Elsewhere across the land, the Greeks celebrate their shared victory. The Spartans, the Corinthians, the Thebans, even those who wavered before now claim their share of the glory. The idea of Greece, Hellas, begins to take shape. But unity, like all human things, is fragile. Old rivalries still smoulder beneath the surface, like embers beneath ash. The Persians may be gone, but pride remains. And pride, Themistocles knows, is more dangerous than any foreign army. Still for now, peace holds, the festivals return, the theatres reopen, the poets sing again. You wander through one of those nights, the festival of Dionysus. The torches burn bright, the air heavy with the scent of wine and honey. In the open-air theatre, a new kind of story is being born. Not hymns to gods or chants of war, but tragedies. Tales of human choice, of fate and flaw and consequence. You sit among the crowd as the actors, masked and grand, tell stories that make the people weep and laugh in the same breath. For the first time, Greece begins to look inward, to ask not only what happened, but why. And it all began because they survived. Far away in Persia, the great king sits on his throne in Susa, the air thick with incense. Xerxes is older now, and though his empire still gleams, the memory of Greece lingers like a thorn under his skin. His armies return diminished. His fleets lie rotting in foreign waters. He does not speak of it often, but the weight of failure has settled on him, like dust on gold. He stares into the distance as servants fan him with peacock feathers. He dreams of marble cities burning, of battles lost to wind and sea. Sometimes he wonders if the gods of the Greeks were stronger or simply hungrier. For the first time, the empire turns inward too. Back in Athens, the scars of war have given birth to something the world has never seen, a democracy with confidence in itself. The people debate not just survival, but philosophy. You can hear it in the agora, voices rising and falling in argument, words like weapons, sharp and deliberate. Old men quote Homer. Young thinkers question the nature of justice, of virtue, of the soul. The same people who once swung swords at Marathon now shape ideas with the same fervour. It's as if the victory over Persia unlocked something deeper, a belief that human reason, not just divine favour, can shape destiny. Socrates will not be born for another generation, but you can already feel his world stirring beneath your feet. At night, you walk again through the plain of Marathon. The grass sways in the sea wind, the moon laying silver light across the quiet ground. The mound of the fallen glows faintly in the distance. Fireflies drift over it like the spirits of the dead, restless but peaceful. You sit by the edge of the marsh and listen to the waves. The sound is eternal, the same rhythm that has carried the years since the battle, the same rhythm that carried the Persians home, that carried Athens forward. You wonder what Miltiades would think if he could see this. A city not just surviving but thriving, becoming something greater because of what it endured. He fought for a single victory, but his battle became the seed of an entire civilization. And yet, as you sit there, you realise something else. The story of Marathon is not only about Greece or Persia, it's about the fragile balance that every age must face, between fear and courage, between the desire for peace and the need to defend it. The men who fought here were not born heroes. They were ordinary, flawed, uncertain. They felt the same exhaustion, the same doubts, the same longing for home that you might feel now, sitting under the stars. And that, perhaps, is what makes their story eternal. Because in the end, the world is always full of empires, vast, powerful, inevitable. But sometimes, in a single moment, on a single field, against impossible odds, a handful of people say no, and everything changes. The dawn comes quietly over the hills, the first light touches the sea, the olive trees, the distant mountains. Birds begin to call. The world stirs again, as it always does. The city of Athens will rise from this morning into an age of wonder, of philosophers, sculptors, playwrights, architects. But all of it will trace its roots back to this silence, this soil, this memory of men who once stood shoulder to shoulder against the tide. The wind sighs through the reeds, and in that sound you can almost hear it, Not words exactly, but something close. Remember. The wind over Marathon still smells of salt and olive, the same way it did years ago when the first cries of battle echoed across this plain. But now that scent carries something else. Time. The grass that once bent under the feet of charging men grows wild again. The soil that once drank blood now yields wheat and wildflowers. The sea murmurs as it always has, its rhythm patient, eternal. You walk through the tall grass and your fingers brush against the stalks. Somewhere beneath your feet, beneath layers of dust and seasons, the bones of those men still rest. They do not stir, but the earth remembers. Each gust of wind, each creak of the reeds, feels like a whisper from them. A reminder, not of war, but of what it means to endure. The story of Marathon is now history, and yet not only history, it has become something larger, a legend. And legends, once born, never quite sleep. It is the year after the Persian retreat and the cities of Greece hum with renewal. The temples rise, the markets flourish, and yet something in the Greek heart has changed forever. For centuries they had measured themselves against each other, Athens against Sparta, Corinth against Thebes. Now, for the first time, they measure themselves against the world. The victory over Persia has given them a kind of confidence that no empire could teach. The Greeks have discovered their own worth, and with it, the vastness of their potential. But beneath the pride, beneath the bright festivals and new marble walls, lingers an unease. Because even in victory, the shadow of the East remains. The Persian Empire still exists, still enormous, still watching. The Greeks know this. They know that the struggle is not only of arms, but of memory, of spirit, of story. And so they begin to build not just to live, but to be remembered. In Athens, that idea takes shape in marble. The Acropolis, once blackened by fire, begins to rise from its ashes. You climb the steep path toward it at dawn, the sky blushing pink over the Aegean. The city below glows faintly in the early light, a web of rooftops and smoke trails, of human life still waking. The sound of chisels greets you before the gates. Men work with rhythmic precision, shaping massive stones into columns, carving fluted shafts, cutting blocks that fit so perfectly together you can barely slip a thread between them. The air is full of dust and the music of hammers. At the centre of the activity stands a tall figure, not a soldier but an architect, giving quiet instructions. He gestures toward the hilltop, where the new temple will rise, a temple to Athena, the goddess who has watched over them through every trial. You can see his vision in your mind already. Columns white as dawn, a roof shining in the sun, the goddess herself in gold and ivory looking down upon her city. It will be both sanctuary and symbol, the heart of Athens made stone, and it will stand long after those who build it are gone. Themistocles does not live to see it completed. His brilliance carried Athens through the fire, but in peace his ambition becomes dangerous. Envy stirs in the assembly, suspicion whispers through the alleys. The people who once trusted him begin to fear him. He is ostracized, sent into exile by the very democracy he helped preserve. As he leaves the city, he turns once toward the sea, that same sea he made into Athens' shield, and smiles bitterly. "They will need me again," he says quietly, and history in its way will prove him right. But for now, the city he leaves behind blooms. Artists carve gods from marble. Philosophers gather under olive trees to argue about the nature of virtue, truth, and love. Poets sing of heroes, but their heroes are no longer divine. They are human, flawed, searching. You walk through the agora and hear these voices everywhere. The conversations rise and fall like waves. "What is justice?" one man asks. "What is beauty?" another replies. And from these questions, the very shape of Western thought begins to form. The victory at Marathon was a battle of bodies. The victories that follow will be of the mind. At night, in the quiet of the hills, the stars spread across the sky in a pattern the Greeks know by heart. Orion, Pleiades, Cassiopeia. But among those stars they now see something else, themselves. Not as pawns of the gods, but as beings capable of greatness through their own will. That idea, born from defiance, tempered by fear, becomes their greatest inheritance. You sit beneath those same stars, feeling the cool air brush your face, and realize that the battle was never only about Athens. It was about a moment in time when people decided that freedom fragile and costly, was worth everything. Years later, the plain of Marathon becomes a place of pilgrimage. Soldiers and citizens alike come here to walk the ground where their fathers stood. Some bring offerings, olive wreaths, small amphorae of wine, coins pressed into the soil. Others bring only silence. You watch as a young boy kneels beside the burial mound. His father places a hand on his shoulder, whispering softly, "Here, the men of Athens stood against the world." The boy nods, wide-eyed, tracing the grass with his fingers. He cannot imagine the battle, the shouting, the terror, the blood. But he can feel the weight of it in the air, the way the land itself seems to hum with the memory of courage. The two of them stand there for a long time, saying nothing, listening to the wind move through the reeds. And yet, even as Athens grows brighter, even as its art and thought begin to shape the known world, the seeds of its next trials are being sown. Prosperity breeds rivalry. Freedom breeds ambition. The same fire that made the city great threatens to consume it from within. For now, though, the people live as if tomorrow will never come. They fill their amphitheatres with laughter and song. They dance in the torchlight at festivals, wine spilling like liquid sunlight from their cups. The shadows of the past still lie across their land, but they have learned to walk with them, to weave them into beauty. One evening, as the sun sets over the hills, painting the sea in bands of rose and gold, you find yourself again at the edge of the plain. The reeds whisper as the wind shifts, and the faint sound of waves carries up from the shore. You close your eyes and listen. The hum of history seems to vibrate all around you, faint, low, endless. You think of those men long gone now, and of the moments that shaped them, the fear, the run, the clash, the impossible victory. They could not have known what their courage would build. They could not have imagined philosophers and temples, poetry and democracy, ideas that would outlive even the stones they walked on. They only knew the urgency of that one dawn, the press of the earth beneath their feet, the need to hold the line, and somehow that was enough. The sky darkens. The first stars appear, each one a faint shimmer above the distant mountains. The sea whispers softly, patient as time. You stay a little longer, letting the wind move through your hair. The sound of the waves sink into your breathing. The past, you realize, never truly disappears. It lingers, in stories, in songs, in the quiet places where the world still remembers. Marathon is one of those places, and if you listen long enough you can still hear it. Not the clash of arms, but the heartbeat of men who decided, once and for all, that they would not be conquered. The plain of Marathon lies quiet beneath the morning mist. The reeds along the marshes whisper their endless song, and the sea just beyond the dunes breathes in slow, patient rhythm. It's been decades now since the clash of bronze and iron, yet if you stand still long enough, if you breathe deeply, you can almost hear it. The distant echo of running feet, the rush of courage breaking through fear. But today, there is no battle, only stillness. The farmers have returned, their oxen moving slowly through furrowed fields. Wildflowers scatter across the slopes where once shields locked and spears flashed in the sun. Time has softened the scars of war, as it always does, turning tragedy into story, story into memory, and memory into myth. Still the name lingers, Marathon. It rolls from the tongue like a prayer and a promise at once, and in every whisper of wind, in every ripple on the sea, you can sense that the gods have not forgotten. Athens too remembers. The city has grown since those early days of terror and triumph. The marble of its temples gleams white in the sun. The hum of its agora is constant, merchants bargaining, philosophers debating, children running between the stalls. The voices of poets fill the air. The city that once fought for survival now shapes the very idea of civilization. And yet, woven through all its grandeur, there remains that first pulse of defiance, the heartbeat of the men who stood at Marathon. They are long gone, but their spirit endures in the marble and the music, in every speech spoken beneath the open sky. It is as though Athens herself has taken their courage and turned it into a philosophy, an art, a way of being. At the gymnasia, young men train in the early morning light, their bodies glistening with sweat, their movements precise and rhythmic. But these are not warriors preparing for battle. They are citizens training for excellence, for arect, that elusive harmony between body and mind. They learn not only to fight, but to think. They recite Homer, debate virtue, quote Solon and Heraclitus. They are taught that true strength lies in wisdom as much as in muscle. Among them, an old soldier watches silently. His hair is white now, his eyes sharp but softened by years. Once he ran down the Persian line at Marathon. Now he teaches the young how to stand, how to hold a shield, how to breathe, how to believe. When one of the boys asks him what the battle was truly like, he smiles faintly. Loud, he says, and very quiet. The boy frowns. How can it be both? The old man looks toward the sea, where the horizon glitters like a blade. Because when you fight for everything, he says softly, the world stops making sense. You don't hear yourself anymore. You only hear the heartbeat of all the men beside you. He pauses, then adds, and when the battle's over, that heartbeat never leaves you. The boy doesn't yet understand, but one day, perhaps, he will. You leave the training grounds and wander through the agora. The air smells of honey and figs, of wine and smoke. A crowd gathers near the stoa where a new orator is speaking. His voice rises clear and passionate above the murmur of the city. He speaks of freedom, not as a gift from the gods, but as something earned and guarded. We are the sons of Marathon, he says, and the crowd murmurs approval. Our fathers did not kneel before kings. Let us not kneel before comfort. The people nod, their faces lit with pride. They know what he means. The danger now is not invasion, but complacency. The empire Athens has begun to build through alliances, through fleets, through the tribute of islands far away, is powerful but fragile. It must remember what gave it life, courage, unity, sacrifice. Even as prosperity grows, the city's heart beats with that old rhythm, steady, defiant, alive. Outside the walls, at the edge of the olive grove, stands a small shrine. It is simple. 4 pillars of white stone, a small altar, a bronze bowl for offerings. The people say it marks the spot where the runner fell, Pheidippides, who carried the word of victory from the plain to the city. You walk toward it in the late afternoon. The sun burns low, the air heavy with the hum of bees. Someone has left a wreath of laurel on the altar. Someone else has poured oil into the bowl, its surface reflecting the golden light. You stand before it for a long moment, listening to the cicadas drone in the trees. There is no sound of battle here, no roar of triumph, only peace. Yet in that peace lies everything the runner gave his life for. You whisper his name. Not loud, not for anyone to hear, just enough for the air to carry it. And for an instant the wind seems to pause as if listening. Years will turn into centuries. The people who built these temples will fade, their marble worn down by rain and time. Empires will rise and fall, Macedon, Rome, Byzantium. The names will change, the gods will change, even the languages will shift. But the story of Marathon will survive. It will travel across oceans and ages, passed from mouth to mouth, from scroll to ink, from legend to history. And somewhere, thousands of years later, men and women will still speak that name. They will run long distances in its honour, feeling their hearts pound with the same determination that drove Pheidippides across the hills. They will not remember every detail, but they will remember what mattered, that a handful of people once chose freedom over fear, and every time a runner crosses a finish line garbled, gasping and spent, the spirit of Marathon will whisper through the crowd again, "Rejoice, we are victorious." But for now, here in ancient Greece, the day fades quietly. The city glows gold in the evening light. Smoke curls upward from hearths carrying the smell of bread and oil. Somewhere on the Acropolis, a priestess sings softly to Athena. The air is warm and still. You walk back towards the hills, and from there you can see both the sea and the city. Between them lies the plain, that silent witness to courage, that cradle of a new world. The sun slips beneath the horizon. The first stars appear. The wind rises once more, gentle and cool, brushing against your skin like a hand in farewell. The sea breathes, the earth hums, and all around you the night folds over Marathon like a soft, endless memory. You feel the earth before you see the road. The tremor of 1,000 feet still lingers in the soil behind you. A fading thunder that hums up through your calves and into your chest. The field of Marathon lies a breath behind your shoulder, heavy with silence now, heavy with the stillness that only comes after men have spent everything they had to give. The last shouts, the last clatter of shields, the last hiss of broken arrows, they have all gone thin, like a sound swallowed by distance and heat. What remains is the living weight of a message inside your ribs, pressing outward as if it has grown too large for your body. You tighten the thong around your ankle. You press your palm against your breastbone, not in prayer exactly, but in recognition. There is no room left inside you for fear or doubt. Only the road, only the truth you must carry, only the city waiting at the other end of breath. Gus, someone says behind you. You do not look back, because to look back is to remember the bodies on the beach and the faces you cannot carry with you. You bow toward the sound of the sea, one quick nod to the place that has taken so much and still breathes like a gentle animal, and then you begin to run. The first steps are the hardest. Your legs complain like old friends who have been asked for one favour too many. The skin of your heels is raw. Your throat is a clay jar that has been fired too long, hairline cracked, hot even against the air. You taste salt, your own and the sea's, and dust stirred from the plain by 10,000 sandals. But the ground under your feet has a rhythm that fits the rhythm of your heart, and after a dozen strides the aches line themselves up like obedient soldiers. They are still there, but they fall into formation. They agree to come with you. You aim yourself toward the hills. The plain behind you looks smooth as water in the late sun. Before you, the land gathers into folds and shadows, olive groves stitched along the slopes like silver thread. The road begins as packed earth and broken stone, a line made by habit and hooves and feet, a path that knows you because you have run it before. You let your eyes soften and trust the ground to find you. You breathe in 4, out 4, counting, not with numbers but with the turning of your shoulders and the swing of your arms. Your name moves through your head with the steadiness of your stride, not as a boast and not as a song, but as a kind of tether. Pheidippides. The city knows you as a runner, a messenger, the man who can place one foot after the other even when the god of pain taps a finger against your spine. You remember the other road, the long road to Sparta days ago, mountains in your mouth, stars hard as spear points, and how you begged for help and were told to wait for a moon you did not have. You remember the wild goat track, the sudden scent of pines after a blind turn, the taste of bronze in your lungs when the hills rose up like shields. You remember how the body learns a different alphabet when it is alone with the distance, a language made entirely of breath and hunger, and the quiet courage of not stopping. This is shorter, and yet it is not, because the road now is braided with the weight of the dead and the weight of the living who sent you. Because at the end of this run there is a city that must learn immediately and without doubt that its world still stands. The sun sits low, copper on your cheek. Heat rises from the earth in sheets so thin you can nearly see through them. A lizard darts across the path and vanishes under a stone. From the left, the smell of crushed time lifts like a cool hand toward your face. You pass a shrine to the roadside god, a square pillar with a face worn smooth by fingers and weather. A drizzle of oil darkens the stone. A few figs, already busy with bees, rest beside it. You tap the top of the pillar as you pass, not with superstition, but with the old runner's pact. Guard my feet, keep my path, let my breath be enough. The first rise takes you into the trees. Shade collects around your shoulders. The air is still and warm like bath water, but it no longer burns. Your breath slows half a measure. You let your hands float loose. Your mind makes a small room and sits there sweeping. There is no room for the Persians here. No room for the horses that never reached you. No room for the roar that shook the air when bronze met reed. There is only a sentence folded and folded again so it will fit inside a man. Rejoice, we are victorious. You do not practice the words on your tongue. You have learned that words left on the tongue are words that get lost in the throat. Instead, you place the message in your breath itself, so every exhale becomes a rehearsal, quiet, unvoiced, a kind of prayer to speech. You think of the agora, a bright bowl of voices. You think of women with oil on their hands, of children who have been told to be brave and to be quiet, of old men who have seen too many summers to pretend they do not know what it means when ships appear on a horizon. You think of the Acropolis watching, stone eyelids heavy with heat. You think of doors barred from the inside. You think of hands knotted together in the dark. You think of your city as a living chest, and your message as the breath that will fill it. The path tips down into a runnel of stone. The ground is broken here. The winter rains do this every year, gnawing at the road until it becomes a mouthful of teeth. You lift your knees and let your ankles be clever. The rhythm shifts, quickens. becomes something like a dance you learned as a child when the elders taught you how to move across scree without tearing your feet. A shepherd looks up from a scrubby slope where his flock chews at the stubborn grass. He lifts 2 fingers in a greeting the way mountain men do, not wasting breath on a shout. You nod without slowing. Your shadow runs across his face like a cloud. There are sounds you do not expect, and sounds you wait for. You expect the rattle of your own gear. Nothing but a belt and a knife now, light as a rumour. You expect the mild thunder of your feet and the breath that plays low in your throat like a reed flute. You do not expect the sudden cough of a partridge exploding from the brush. You wait for the wind to turn off the sea and bring you the cool warning of dusk. You half wait for a horse, for the clatter of a foreign bit, for the barked order of a tongue that tastes like iron. But the only horse you hear is your heart, steady on the stones. The climb returns. The hill before you is not cruel, only patient. It does not deny you the top, it simply asks questions, one after another, each step a query toward your willingness. You learn to answer without words. Your answer is a heel that lifts. Your answer is a knee that says yes. Your answer is the quiet refusal to bargain with the distance. Sweat gathers in your eyebrows and falls in brief salty commas to the earth. The commas are not pauses. The sentence continues. Memories enter and leave without your asking, like birds on a wind you cannot see. Your mother's hand, warm and tethered by the smell of bread. A tutor's voice explaining how to stretch the calf until it sings but does not shout. The first day you ran more than 12 miles and discovered that after the pain there is a meadow where the body becomes a simple machine. A water wheel, a loom, a thing that does what it was built to do as long as the stream runs. The night you slept out under a juniper as a boy, and woke with a star caught in the fork of a branch bright as a god's eye. None of these memories interfere. They are the small lamps along the road. You pass them and the road stays lit. Halfway, you know it the way sailors know a wind shift. In the bones first, in the skin second, in the mind last. The slope softens. The light loses a finger's worth of its harshness. The earth smells greener, as if a shallow stream is hidden somewhere under the stones. Your stride loosens without your permission. The body left alone is generous. You do not mark the halfway with triumph. You mark it by choosing not to look for the city yet. It is there. It will be there. You do not need your eyes to make promises your lungs must keep. You take a drink from the thought of water. You keep going. The track pours you out onto a wider road, rutted by wagon wheels, commied by hoof prints hardened into cups. A fig tree leans over the ditch, split at an old lightning scar, a ladder of pale wood climbing through its dark, glossy leaves. A boy stands on the lowest branch and stares as you pass, a fig in his hand forgotten in its own readiness. He opens his mouth, closes it, then lifts the fig high, an offering or a salute. You do not take it, but the gesture enters you and sits gently behind your heart. A dog trots along beside you for 12 paces, yellow, ribbed, curious. He keeps perfect time, as if he hears in your footfalls a music he recognizes. When he peels off again toward the smell of someone's cook fire, his departure is so quiet it feels like a blessing. You crest the next rise and the world opens like a palm. Far off in the cradle of hills, the Acropolis catches the last stern light like a cold ember. The city is a grey animal pressed low against the land. Smoke threads from its nostrils. Your chest makes a new space for this sight and sets it gently among the others that keep you moving. For a moment your legs feel light, traitorously light, as if joy could lift you over the last miles like a god's invisible hand. You mistrust it and return to your work. Lightness leaves quickly, work stays. Fatigue is not a wall, it is a sea. It rises in predictable tides if you have studied its moons. You feel one of those tides now, a slow, sure swelling that reaches your hips and then your ribs. The air thins, not in the world, but in you. Your mouth opens wider but takes in nothing more. You do not fight, you adjust. You shorten the stride by a finger's width. You bring your elbows closer. You narrow your thought until it can fit through the hole the body gives you. You move through the tide like a man walking in waist-deep water. Deliberate, forward, utterly without flourish. You pass a farmstead where a woman beating a rug on a line looks up at the slap-slap of your sandals and startles as if a deer had crossed her threshold. Her hands fall to her sides. She stares. Her mouth forms a question you answer with your eyes. Yes, alive. Yes, we did it. She does not shout your name because she does not know it. She does something better. She nods once and makes the sign some women make for a prayer, thumb to lip, thumb to breastbone. And your heart, surprised by this small, fierce worship, beats one hard beat that nearly pulls you to your knees. You do not fall, you do not stop. You tell your legs you will love them later. They accept the deferred promise. Evening gathers. Not darkness yet, only a gentling of edges. The cicadas take up their rough song in the low trees, a chorus of wooden rattles shaken by invisible children. You smell water and turn your head just enough to catch the wink of a spring where a shepherd has tucked a cup inside a cleft of rock. You do not leave the road. But you cross the 2 paces needed to dip your fingers, lift the smallest part of the world toward your tongue, and let it touch there like the kiss of a god with mercy enough for men. You swallow. You return to the centre of the road and resume the old agreement between distance and will. In the near distance you hear bells, not the bright festival kind, goat bells, irregular and companionable. A herd crosses the road ahead, the animals flowing from scrub to scrub like a creek over stones. The goat herd lifts his crook when he sees you and raises his eyebrows at your speed and your solitude. You pass among the animals like a wind that does no harm, your hands a little wider to keep them from brushing your hips. The bell notes hang behind you like stars. You do not notice the moment your feet stop being yours. Ownership changes gradually in a run like this. At first the legs belong to you, then they belong to the road, then they belong to the message, and finally they belong to no one at all. They become a fact. You are the witness. You sign your name to each step, but the step would happen whether or not you took the pen in your hand. This is a grace you have earned 1 mile at a time across a life. You do not question it now. You let the legs be their own small gods and keep your mind on the city. Closer. The walls become a line, then a shape, then a sentence written against the evening. You hear voices, low at first, as if the city were talking in its sleep. You smell cook fires and unwashed wool and olive pressings and the specific ash of the trees they burn inside the gates. You taste anxiety in the air as clearly as salt. They have been waiting. Even those who do not know they have waited have been waiting, their bodies bent toward the road with an animal attention that their minds, occupied with the rituals of fear, have not noticed. Someone has prayed for you without knowing your name. Someone has washed a doorstep twice because she needed to move and could not. Someone has told his grandson that the gods watch men at road's end. Someone has sharpened a knife and then set it down. You reach the outer slope where the road levels and widens. 2 boys playing pebbles leap up, stones scattering, and stare with eyes like coins. One yelps, not in alarm but wonder. A shape in motion at the edge of belief. A guard on the gate, he is young, his beard a new idea, leans into the doorway, and then straightens so suddenly the spear in his fist trembles against the stone. People draw toward you as leaf shadows draw toward wind. "From Marathon?" someone calls. "From the plain?" You do not answer because the answer is a sentence made to be given once, whole and unbroken. You pass under the gate. The stone above your head compresses the sound of your breath. For a heartbeat you run inside a drum. Then the street receives you. The slope lifts. Gods love to put hills near the end. Your thighs become firewood. You let them burn. The crowd ripples in front of you, making a path not from courtesy but from instinct. Faces flicker. A girl with thyme in her hair. An old man whose lip trembles with the effort not to cry. A potter with clay half dried on his forearms. A baker smelling of yeast and smoke. A boy who will tell this night again and again until his memory turns it into him. Hands hover but do not touch. Everyone knows that to touch is to risk breaking the thin, bright thread you are carrying between your ribs. The agora opens like a hand. Torches lift in a ring and throw gold onto the stones. The air is thick with held breath. The sounds of the city recede until only your footfalls speak. You do not slow as you cross that open space. You do not kneel. You do not decorate your message. You reach the place where a cluster of magistrates and elders stand. Pale and rigid as if carved, you lift your head. There is a second before speech in which your heart and your lungs agree to a miracle. The heart steps aside, the lungs open. The breath that began on the beach in blood and salt rises through your throat like a small, perfect god. "Rejoice," you say. And the word is not yours, but the city's. We are victorious. It is not a shout. It does not need to be. The sentence travels to the edge of the square and beyond it as if the air were a bowl and you had poured water. The sound touches the faces before you and breaks them open, not into laughter. Laughter will come, but into relief so deep it looks like silence. Men close their eyes. Women sag against door frames as if the walls had removed their hands from their backs. A child claps once, a sharp bird-like sound, and then hides his face in his mother's robe and shakes. You watch the sentence do its work. You watch it enter the city. You watch it light every small lamp inside every body that hears it. For a breath, you are no longer running. You are carried. Then the world returns to its old laws. The heart asserts itself. The body, which has obeyed like a soldier, asks for pardon in the only language it knows. A tremor begins in your right leg and travels upward like a ripple in a pond under a thrown pebble. Your vision narrows, not darkness, not yet, but the edges grow soft as wool. You take one step back because the square tilts. A hand shoots out, whose so you cannot see, and steadies your elbow without heat or question. You feel the bones in your chest make a small, careful noise. You understand that the road is leaving you as gently as it brought you. You are not sad. A memory arrives, unbidden and complete. The small shrine by the road, bees drunk on figs, your own fingers tapping the god's square head. Another. The goat bells, the boy with the fig lifted like a blessing, the woman with the rug letting her hands fall, the shepherd's two-finger salute drawn across his face like a stitch. Another, olive leaves weighing the air with their silver, the spring's cold coin on your tongue. Another, the plain itself a moment before the charge, reeds moving like the hair of a sleeping giant, the sea raising its chest and letting it fall. You want to tell the city that all of those things are in this victory, that victory is not only spears and ships, but the common weight of a land that refused to let its people kneel. You do not have to. The sentence you gave them carries the rest like an unseen perfume. They will discover it in their own lungs when they breathe tonight. Your knees buckle once, the hand on your elbow tightens and then gives way, because to hold you would be to deny you the truth you are about to meet. The stones rise, the torches tilt. The square fills with a sound that is not a cheer and not a cry, but something with both salt and honey inside it. The sound a people make when the future re-enters their bodies. You let go. It is not a fall, it is a finishing. The road that began at the edge of the sea and ran through your bones ends exactly where it was always meant to end, in the mouth of your city. The last sound you hear is the rustle that torches make when the night remembers them. The last sight you see is not a face but a shape, the shape of a hill crowned in stone watching over what you love. The last feeling is neither heat nor pain. It is a coolness that begins deep in the chest and spreads outward like the shade of a single olive tree at noon. You do not think of fame. You do not think of story. You do not think of a word that will someday mean endurance, because you chose to keep moving. You've already given the only thing that mattered. What remains is an unclenching of hands, of jaw, of a muscle at the base of the skull that has been iron for too long. When voices rise over you, they are gentle. When hands touch you now, they are too late to injure anything important. Someone says your name correctly, softly, with the respect of a prayer. Someone covers your chest with a cloak you did not need on the road. Someone weeps with the thick, grateful sob of a man who believed the world was over and finds it continuing. The message stands inside the air, intact. You have built, with steps and breath, a bridge from terror to morning. The bridge will hold longer than your bones. The city, which had been balanced on the knife edge between hope and annihilation, has stepped onto it without slipping. It will cross. It will go home to itself. Above, the night climbs up the last rungs of the sky. Somewhere far away a dog barks once and then is satisfied. The wind turns off the sea and brings with it the clean taste of salt and weed and distant foam. The Acropolis shifts from ember to shadow. The torches speak to one another in their dry tongue. People begin to say the sentence you gave them to each other, passing it like bread, like water, like a newborn child. Rejoice, we are victorious. A boy who had watched you pass the gate holds your knife as if it were a sacred thing, and then places it on the stone beside you, point toward home. An old woman tucks your hand under the cloak and wipes your brow without ceremony. A magistrate, his face creased with relief, lifts his head and begins to send runners out along other roads. To the farms, to the hills, to the men who wait with their backs against their own doors. The city changes shape the way a flock changes shape in the air, together all at once by instinct and news. And you, who were the road made flesh, are now only flesh, and then something lighter than that. The breath you carried returns to the world. It lifts, it thins, it disperses. It finds everyone who needs it. There is a quiet that follows great exertion that is not sleep and not death, but the moment two waves travelling in opposite directions pass through each other, and for an instant agree. You dwell there now. The road, if it could speak, would say your name. The city, which can, does. Far away on the plain, the reeds go on whispering their secular prayers. The sea rolls and unrolls the same strip of water as if it were a scroll containing the sum of what men can do and suffer and still call life beautiful. Somewhere beyond the hills, the Persians gather their dead figures into stories of their own and set their faces east. But here, at the centre of your last breath, nothing moves that needs to move, and everything else is allowed to be still. You have finished the distance. The message stands. The city lifts its head. The torches sputter at first, as if the night itself must learn how to hold their light. You stand with the others on the slope above the plain, and the sea, always patient, whispers beyond the dunes. The wind lifts the smoke and carries it sideways across your cheek, a warm breath that smells of pitch and thyme, of oil and wool and faint old blood. Someone to your right clears his throat and stops, as if even that small sound might disturb the dead. The priest raises his hand, the murmur falls away. Silence lays itself across the hill like a cloak. The gods remember. Or so the elders say, but memory like the sea must be asked and fed. So the torches are lit, and the names begin. They do not rush. The voice that reads is low and steady, a careful oar pulling a heavy boat along the dark. Each name lands with its own weight, as singular and undeniable as a footprint in wet earth. With each name, a family breathes in and then out, a single pulse in a long collective body. The fire pops. A boy too young to hold still for grief presses his face into his mother's robe and peeks through the folds as if the dead might come walking up the slope dusty and smiling and late for supper. They do not. The mound below keeps its patient shape against the night. When the list ends, the priest tips the first libation. Oil arcs from a shallow bowl, gleams briefly like a falling star, and strikes the packed earth with a dark, widening kiss. The ground accepts it. The smell rises. Green, bitter, holy. You feel the people around you loosen one notch, as if the earth's first sip allows them their first breath. May the memory of the brave be sweet, the priest says, and may the gods remember the day when men chose freedom. The words are old words, fitted to many occasions, but they carry a new heat now, as iron does after the smith brings it from the coals. Somewhere behind you the sea lifts and lays itself down again, like a giant taking slow, even breaths. It is not only the gods who remember, the city must learn the shape of remembrance too. In the days that follow, Athens practices. You walk the streets and see garlands on doorways, fresh laurel turning dull, replaced with myrtle, replaced again with sprays of olive. Women set small bowls of honey at thresholds. Men scratch names into wet clay before it hardens, not the names of kings or generals, just the names that those inside the house cannot stop hearing in their sleep. At the stoa, the stonecutters labour over a stele, smooth white surface, letters incised so cleanly you can feel the sharpness of the chisel in your teeth. No mention of fathers or sons, the old custom for war memorials, only tribes and the total. The anonymity is deliberate, a kind of vow, all equal in this earth, all equal in this honour. You run your fingers lightly over the grooves. The stone is cool, the letters warm where the sun has found them. You think of how the dead would have laughed at such a contradiction. Cold stone that feels like skin, and you do not move your hand. In the pottery quarter, a painter turns a cup on his wheel and then, with a brush made of boar bristles, draws a small scene he has already painted 10 times this week. A runner, knees lifted, hair flying like a pennant, a line of men with shields overlapping like scales, a ship nosing toward the sand. The scenes are not exact, the painter was not there, but he has been listening. He mixes the story with clay and fire, and men will drink wine from his bowls for years and feel the bittersweet aftertaste of courage on their tongues. At the edge of the city, near a grove of olives raised on terraces, there is a small shrine to Pan that was not there before. Word moves in the quiet way word always moves. Through women at wells, through men with carts, through children who carry news without understanding. On the road to Sparta, on a night that did not end when it should have, a god with goat legs and a smile too wide for a human mouth met a runner and promised his favour. Some scoff. Others, perhaps remembering sudden fear bleached from their bones on the morning of the charge, light little cakes and leave them on the stone. Honey, crushed pine nuts, a curl of cheese that melts almost before the offering is arranged. You do not argue with the way a city makes sense of its terror. You watch the shrine grow garlands like a young tree grows leaves. The theatre takes its turn too. At the next festival, a chorus moves in unison, voices braided into something larger than the singers. They do not name the battle. They do not need to. They sing of a morning when men ran not away from arrows but toward them, and how the gods tilted their heads to listen, and how the sea, surprised into kindness, forgot to claim what it could have taken. The audience, your neighbours, your friends, the man who sells you olives, the woman who once patched your cloak, sways as if the song were a tide. You feel the swing inside your own ribs. You realise that what the chorus says is not for the gods, it is for the living. The city is learning to carry what it cannot put down. The rituals at the mound become precise. On appointed days, priests cut the throats of white rams, turning their heads toward the sea so the blood runs in that direction first. The smell of iron and wool and salt combines into a single, unforgettable perfume. Boys scatter, to barley. Girls, with hair bound in ribbons, carry baskets of flowers and learn how to walk slowly. Runners circle the mound once, twice, not racing, simply reminding the earth with their feet. We remember, we can still move. The message continues. A thin, straight path appears on the slope down to the plain, made by sandals rather than spays, and the reeds accept it without complaint. At the base of the mound, a small, flat stone catches the sun more brightly than its neighbours. People begin to leave things on it. A bronze pin, a sprig of rosemary, a twist of wool dyed purple, tiny knotted testimonies a stranger would not read and does not need to. The stone becomes a kind of ear. The dead, if they miss anything, miss gossip. The living, if they need anything, need someone who will keep their secrets after hearing them. There is, as always, politics. The city tries not to speak of it here. Yet even at the mound one morning you hear two men whispering about who deserves the credit, and whether a certain general's vote was the hinge on which the whole day turned, and whether the Plataeans were thanked enough, and whether Sparta will raise a brow or a spear. The mound listens but does not answer. The dead do not keep ledgers. You drift away from the whispers toward the edge of the marsh, where frogs saw their dull fiddles and dragonflies stitch the air with blue thread. Peace hums louder than argument if you let it. In the workshops near the Diplon Gate, a sculptor models a small winged woman in wax. He will cast her in bronze when the wax says yes. She leans forward on the ball of one foot, like a bird deciding to tip into flight. The sculptor does not know what to call her yet. Later others will name her Nike and set her on high pediments and carve her on coins. For now, she is simply the shape of what people felt on the beach when the ships began to back water and the enemy turned their faces away. He smooths her cheek with his thumb. The metal will forget the warmth, but the shape will keep it. In a house with a courtyard cooled by a trickling cistern, an old man tells a story to children who have pebbles in their fists because they cannot yet keep their hands still. He tells them first what most men tell, the charge, the shout, the shock when bronze met reed and dust rose thick enough to drink. But then he tells them something he does not always say, and you lean closer from your shadow because a truth has changed its clothes and you want to see what it wears now. I was afraid, he says. The children blink. I was afraid, but the man on my right moved first, and I felt his shield knock mine, and I moved with him. And after that there was only forward. And when I think of the gods and whether they helped us, I think perhaps they only put me next to him and taught him to move a heartbeat before I did. The children look disappointed, then relieved, and then they begin to throw their pebbles at an invisible enemy with better aim. This is how myth is made, not by denying fear, but by braiding it with action until the rope holds. You go to the cemetery road where the Keramakos opens into a field of stone and watch a funeral for a man who did not return from the sea a year later, at Salamis. The speaker, chosen by the city for his voice and mind, climbs a platform and looks at everything before he speaks. The women with veils damp in one hand, the men with their jaws set, the small wind pushing the grass into a green ripple. He speaks about the dead as if they were already part of the city's foundations, as if the streets under your feet are laid upon their ribs. He speaks about how freedom tastes like ordinary bread only after blood has salted the earth for it. He speaks about how grief is not a private country but a commons where the living meet and take turns carrying the bucket. He does not name Marathon, but the air shivers once when he passes near it, as if a low note in an old song had sounded in a beam and made the wood remember. The gods have their say in different languages. At Delphi, where the cliff holds sunlight like a bowl and laurel leaves scratch the sky, the Pythia breathes smoke and says a sentence that could be taken three ways. Men will pick the way that suits what they have already decided to do. At Eleusis, where questions are asked about seeds and deaths that are not deaths, the initiates come out quieter than they went in, which is a sign that something true has happened. At the small altars in kitchens, the god of the door gets a crumb and a nod and a whispered request. Keep what I love safe when I sleep. The gods seem content with the scale of these offerings. They do not ask always for ships on ropes, for a bride over a sea bridge, for the lashes of a storm that broke a king's temper. Sometimes a god wants the first fig from a tree and the word, thanks. You visit the mound one evening when the light is copper, and the swallows write their quick, illegible letters above the grass. A woman older than the city's newest laws sits on a stone with a spindle in her lap. She twists and pulls, patient as tide. You ask, because you do not know how not to, whether she had someone here. She smiles without showing teeth. I lost 2 husbands in my life, she says, and a baby the gods took back before she saw the sun twice, and a brother who ran uphill too fast and made his heart a blown jar. But the boy I bring wool to every spring left himself under this hill. She ties off a length of yarn and lays it on the stone, a line of white like surf. And the gods remember, she says, but I do not ask them to remember for me, I practice. Practice becomes custom. Custom becomes law. A decree is scratched. The dead of Marathon are to be honoured here, not carried home to family plots. The polis claims them because the polis they made possible must claim them. It is not theft, it is adoption, and the living, even those who bristle at the state when it weighs heavily on their shoulders, understand that some debts require shared payment. You see strong men stand taller when they read the decree aloud to each other. It makes them both children and fathers at once, and men are kinder when they are both. Of course, the myth grows in directions no one can prune. A boy, mischievous and bright, swears that a shining figure ran on the ridge above the battle, helmeted and tall, and threw a spear of light. A girl who listens at doors says she heard an officer mutter that an old phantom with a ploughshare struck Persians the way a farmer breaks clods. A man who drinks past wisdom insists that the archer's arrows fell like rain but turned to bees and then to smoke. You do not argue. The mind releases heat the way the body releases it. Myth is sweat, and also the salt that keeps. When craftsmen carve reliefs for grave markers, you begin to see a new motif. Not warriors with chariots and oiled hair, but a simple handshake between 2 figures, one taller, one slighter, the living and the dead greeting each other as equals at the door between rooms. The Greeks, you realise, are teaching themselves how to hold death without letting it break their cup. This too is part of the strength born on the plain, a way of standing that does not stiffen, a way of mourning that does not rot. Some nights, after the city has eaten and the day has put its tools away, men sit on thresholds with cups of thin wine, and the talk turns to what will survive us. The easiest answers come first: children, houses, songs. Then someone clears his throat and says laws, and someone else says virtue, and a boy who is not old enough to vote yet says the run. They laugh gently, not at him, but at the rightness that arrived sooner in his mouth than in theirs. You sip and say nothing because your throat tightens, not for the run only, but for the way the sentence at its end made everyone taller without making anyone large. You go once more to the sea at dawn. The water looks newly invented. A fisherman pushes his small boat over the last sand like a father guiding a child through a doorway. The sky holds 3 gulls and a coin of sun, and a pale, unclaimed blue. You think of how many mornings this shore has seen, the soft mornings before the battle, when the reeds said only their own names, the morning of the charge when the air was full of iron and intention, the mornings after, when smoke and salt shared the same balcony, this morning, which seems to carry them all without complaint. You take your sandals off and stand where the wave thinks twice about touching you. The cold runs up the tendons in your feet like silver. Behind you, on its long, low hill, the mound lies with the dignity of a sleeping animal. Ahead of you, the water's language is as old as the first story anyone told to keep a child from crying. You close your eyes, the city speaks in the distance, early carts, a woman calling a name, a dog's brief, officious bark. You put your palms out as if weighing 2 things, grief and a gratitude. They weigh the same. You learn you can carry both if you do not insist on carrying them alone. When you turn back, you pass the small shrine where Pan receives his cakes. Someone has left a pipe made of reed. It is crude, it cannot carry a tune, but it can carry breath. You lift it and blow, and the sound that comes is exactly what the reeds would say if they were given a mouth. Rough, indifferent to flattery. You laugh, which is another kind of offering, and set the pipe down with the softness you would give a sleeping child. The gods remember, yes, but you understand now that the more difficult and necessary remembering belongs to those who sleep and wake and must make the day just with their hands. The gods can hold a mountain in their gaze. You can hold a name on your tongue. The gods can still a sea. You can carry a cup across a floor without spilling. The gods can take a city in their palm. You can teach a boy to stand with his shield a handbreadth further forward so the man at his right feels braver. Between these remembrances, a world is built. You return to the mound at dusk and sit until the stars make their invisible preparations and then step out one by one, as if called by a generous host. You try to pick Marathon's star but cannot. That is correct. The battle should not be a separate light. It should be a brightening in the whole. Somewhere in the city, a poet shapes a line that begins, "We are what we honour," and throws it away and then calls it back and smooths it until it seems inevitable. Somewhere a potter's apprentice runs his finger along a rim and learns how to feel for the instant before a curve becomes a collapse. Somewhere an old soldier teaches a boy to breathe through fear until the fear becomes a tool instead of a master. Somewhere a girl, tired of grief's grammar, invents a new step and teaches it to the other girls so festival nights can hold both tears and laughter and let neither drown the other. The gods are pleased. Or perhaps they are not, and it does not matter, because the polis is learning a more crucial art, to fold loss into strength, to weave story with truth until the cloth can be worn without tearing. Marathon recedes into the depth of time, but it does not diminish. It becomes a root. You can feel it under the city like a dark, patient hand. When the wind turns, you smell the hills and the sea together, dust and brine, olive and spray. It smells like a threshold. The stories told tonight will go on, becoming clearer in some mouths, greener in others, richer, leaner, but always close to the bone. Children will fall asleep to them. Lovers will steady themselves by them. Old men will hang their last memories upon them like coats on a peg and find that they do not fall. The gods remember, the Greeks remember, and beyond the naming, something nameless begins to grow, the courage that is not noise, the freedom that is not boast, the endurance that is not only running, but standing and staying and carrying and keeping watch. A shape is forming in the dark, and you feel its outline with your hands as a potter feels a vessel turning under the heel of his palm. It is the soul of a people learning how to say we, without forgetting I, and I without betraying we. It is the beginning of a promise that will outlive every spear and every song. You rise at last. The night is cool. The torches have burned low, little orange mouths breathing slowly. Someone has left fresh bread at the stone. Someone has left a strip of blue cloth. Someone has left nothing but the print of a hand. You add your hand beside it, open, unafraid, not asking for anything except the strength to remember well. The sea answers by continuing. The stars answer by continuing. The city answers with one small ordinary sound, the squeak of a door, open from within. The stars are old tonight, older than the city, older than the stories told beneath them, older even than the war that once made the world seem so small. They watch in their slow, unblinking way as the people of Athens drift into sleep. The air carries the scent of olive smoke, of the sea's faint salt, of the dust of the Acropolis cooling under moonlight. You stand again upon the hill above Marathon. The grass moves in a soft tide, silver under the moon. The mound below, that long gentle curve of earth, looks almost like a sleeping giant, neither dead nor alive, but something in between, something that remembers. You can hear the night creatures in the reeds, the low hum of wind through stone, and farther out, the steady rhythm of waves folding themselves into the dark. It has been many years since the battle, and yet this place has never been empty. Every spring the Athenians come, priests in white robes, children carrying baskets of barley, old soldiers limping beside the sons of men they once fought beside. They pour wine into the earth, scatter oil and grain, and whisper the names of the fallen. The city has changed, as all cities must. The streets are broader now, lined with porticos and fountains. The markets overflow with goods from islands far across the sea. Philosophers gather in shaded courtyards, their words bright and quick as birds. Sculptors carve stone that seems almost to breathe. Builders raise temples that touch the sky. But even now, when a festival ends and the torches burn low, when the night hush settles over the hills, you can hear the same sound you heard once before, the faint rhythm of footsteps, the heartbeat of a people who have learned that freedom is both a gift and a burden. In the Agora, the storytellers still speak of Marathon. The tale has changed, as tales always do. The gods take more credit now. Some say Athena herself guided Miltiades' hand. Others whisper that Pan ran with the Athenian line, his laughter scattering the enemy like leaves. The runner's story has grown too. He is faster now, braver, sometimes even immortal. Children act out his role, run in the dusty squares, their small voices shouting, "Rejoice, we are victorious," before they fall giggling into each other's arms. But beneath the songs and the laughter, the truth endures. That it was not the gods who saved Athens, nor the heroes carved in marble, but ordinary men, farmers, fishermen, potters, who stood together because they could not bear to see their homes burned. Every time the story is told, the listeners fall quiet at the same moment. The moment when the men ran, shields locked, hearts pounding, knowing that the line might break, but running anyway. It is there, in that instant, that Athens still lives. In the years that followed, there were other wars, other victories, other defeats. Xerxes returned to his empire, leaving ruins behind him. The Greeks grew stronger, then divided, then stronger again. The sea that once carried enemies began to carry merchants, philosophers, travellers, ideas. The city that once trembled in fear became a teacher to the world. Words like freedom, reason, virtue began to take root, spreading far beyond the olive groves and the white walls of Athens. And though time blurred the details, one truth remained bright, that everything began here, on this stretch of ground where courage outweighed fear. You walk through the ruins of the future Athens, the one yet to come. The Parthenon gleams in the distance, its columns pale as dawn. The statues of gods stand silent and perfect, their stone eyes gazing out toward the sea. The streets below hum with life, philosophers arguing in shaded colonnades, artisans hammering bronze, children chasing each other through the dust. The city breathes. It has become something more than its people, an idea, a way of seeing the world. And that idea began not with marble or philosophy, but with men who believed that their lives, small as they were, could hold the weight of history. Every pillar, every temple, every law and poem and painting that will one day shape the world, all of it stands on the bones of that belief. You look back toward the plain. The wind stirs again, the grass bends, and the sound it makes is almost like speech. You imagine you can hear the voices of the fallen, not ghosts, not wailing, but a murmur of contentment. They have seen what their courage built. They have watched their city rise from the ashes, watched it grow wise and flawed and magnificent. They know now that they did not die only for a day's victory, but for generations of thought and beauty and human striving yet to come. And perhaps they understand as you do now that victory is never final, that freedom must be won again and again, not always with swords, but with words, with choices, with the refusal to let fear rule the heart. The night deepens, the stars wheel slow and sure across the sky. You can almost feel the weight of centuries pressing forward, the slow river of time that will carry these stories across empires and languages and oceans. In 1,000 years, the city may crumble, the temples may fall, the names of its generals may fade from memory, but somewhere a poet will still speak of a battle where men stood against the impossible and did not yield. Somewhere a runner will still carry the flame of that first message, not only of victory but of endurance. And somewhere a child will still whisper the word marathon and feel, without knowing why, a spark of pride in their chest. You close your eyes and listen one last time. The night holds its breath. The sea murmurs softly in the distance. The wind moves through the reeds, gentle and endless. When you open your eyes again, the mound is still there, quiet beneath the stars. The torches along its base flicker in the wind, and for a moment their light seems to form the shape of running men. There and then gone, like a heartbeat in the dark. The city sleeps beyond the hills. Tomorrow it will wake and argue and laugh and build and forget and remember again. That is what living cities do. You take one final breath of the salt air and whisper, not loudly, but enough for the wind to carry it. "Rejoice, we are victorious." And though no one answers, you feel the words return to you soft as a tide against the shore.